In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Uh, what to do? When you heard it, you should have said, "We will not repeat this. Glory be to you. This is a gross falsehood. God admonishes you that you shall never do it again, if you are believers." God thus explains the revelations for you. God is omniscient, wise. Those who love to see immorality spread among the believers have incurred a painful retribution in this life and in the hereafter. God knows what you do not know. God showers you with his grace and mercy. God is most kind towards the believers, most merciful. The devil encourages baseless accusations. O you who believe, do not follow the steps of Satan. Anyone who follows the steps of Satan should know that he advocates evil and vice. If it were not for God's grace towards you and his mercy, none of you would have been purified. But God purifies whomever he wills. God is here nowhere. Those among you who are blessed with resources and wealth shall be charitable towards the relatives, the poor, and those who immigrated for the sake of God. They shall treat them with kindness and tolerance. Do you not love to attain God's forgiveness? God is forgiver, most merciful. Gross sin. Surely those who falsely accuse married women who are pious believers have incurred condemnation in this life and in the hereafter. They have incurred a horrendous retribution. The day will come when their own tongues and hands and feet will bear witness to everything they have done. On that day, God will requite them fully for their works, and they will find that God is the truth. The bad women for the bad men, the bad men for the bad women, the good women for the good men, and the good men for the good women. The latter are innocent of such accusations. They have attained forgiveness and a generous reward.
How's it going? Did you want to make start off with any comments or questions from the verses?
Um, I think it's very straightforward, so I'm not sure I have comments. I'll be listening, God willing.
I can make a just to kind of open up with the first comment on 16. Um, to me, one of the lessons I take away from this is the aspect of, let's assume, okay, God forbid, like you saw some immorality among a believer, that it's better in the sense where these stuff doesn't become public at the expense of, hey, let me broadcast this out to the masses so that everyone knows what this person has done. That the well-being of the morality of the society is more important than bringing that one individual uh towards them, that even if they did something wrong. That was always my take regarding that concept, is that it's more important for the society at large that we just maintain good moral behavior, and we instill that into the society, that that if there is this aspect of immorality, sexual immorality, that it's more important that this doesn't get broadcasted, rather than in essence, hey, let's hold these people accountable. That the intent is more to just elevate the overall morality of the society rather than the accountability of the individual. What do you guys think about that regarding 24:16? If anyone else has thoughts on it.
Yeah, just like not spreading the falsehood, right? Like that's why God kind of points us out 17:36. verify for ourselves, right? Like stop the action, right? Like if you hear something, you got to verify it.
I kind of feel like not only that, but in addition, that this is like good for us, not to try, like not to be try to be harmful towards other people. Like we don't want all of our things spilt out, so maybe take that into consideration as well. But I think, you know, that we kind of are at risk of, you know, maybe falling into some self-righteousness or like just some internal impurities when, you know, when we're doing certain things, such as broadcasting somebody else's disobedience or whatever. Like, what deep down inside, what really is the purpose for it? You know, keeping ourselves in check with things like that, I think is important.
There's this proclivity amidst some parts of community to kind of like spread rumors or to gossip, and yeah, like Brandy kind of alluded to, like, well, what benefit does it bring the community except for hardship and pain? You know, a bunch of whispers when you get together or whatever. Yeah, and I just see this as a ways and means to eliminate that factor, right? Kind of focus on yourself. Like submission is a very like self-analyzing and holding yourself accountable, and not worrying about others, right? You can give warnings and reminders, but besides that, like spending talking about these things without any knowledge, right? All it does is it creates hardship and pain for everybody involved.
You know, I love that you said that too, because I was literally just thinking about something that just I couldn't stop thinking about is, I would assume that the word most used in the Quran, from what I've observed so far, is the word you. So this is, you know, God speaking to the reader. And, you know, ultimately, you know, whatever we do, like these commandments are to the reader, and it's important that we remember that, you know, we are bending our characters and overcoming our own obstacles to become more righteous. And, you know, but yeah, I think just to remember to focus more on the self than on other people is key to growth. It's so easy, like with the ego, it's easy to read verses and to think of other people that you see on the bad side of, you know, the verses, like the bad guy. And I think that's your ego's way of trying to hide itself, you know, to bury down and be kind of like sort of self-righteous. So if we can just, me personally, if I can just, you know, recognize that I'm doing that and try to like fit myself in there, you know, I'd be much better off.
May I add something to that?
Yeah, please do.
I mean, it's really good to also, you know, emphasize the individual, the certain in the Quranic text, because it kind of stops this witch hunt that's going on. You know, with like we have also seen that through history that people are judging, oh, your virtues and yada yada yada, for other people as well. So I can see it also in like current like Muslim environment, also in YouTube as well. There's a lot of sheikhs that just point fingers, you're kafir, etc. etc. And I'll be like, I think God didn't want this to begin with. He generally speaks to individuals to better themselves, and not necessarily pointing fingers all the time to people.
I think Brandy made an interesting observation regarding this aspect of self-righteousness, where certain individuals they elevate themselves by trying to bring other people down. Um, that there is this tendency with rumors and gossip, is the fact that sometimes people are doing this in the way of trying to elevate themselves. Um, the other angle, though, too, it's like if you think about a lot of this stuff that if you see it in common society, is a celebrity gossip, where they say, "Oh, this celebrity did X, Y, and Z," and one of the things that that does is they become kind of the hallmark because they're a celebrity of what other people want to emulate. And if you actually highlight, let's say hypothetically, it's true they did do something like that, but it's a personal matter, it's a personal affair. It kind of gives a green light for other people who want to emulate them by highlighting the bad aspects. And it's not to say that we don't believe people are going to be held accountable for it. If I have a choice, let's say there's an individual, right, and they're a prominent figure. Do I want to highlight their the good message, the good qualities they're portraying, or the bad? Because what I'm propagating throughout society, that's what individuals are going to be focused on. There's this expression regarding the media is that the media isn't very good at changing the opinions of people, but they are very good at getting the people to decide what to focus on. And I think that if you see if most of the publications are gossip and rumors and just like slander, that's what the society is going to be focused on. When they're having their chats with friends, they're going to be talking about that. But if the media is portraying, acts of courage and justice and good qualities, and in our day-to-day conversations of the average individual, that's going to be the topic of a conversation.
I also want to point out something. There's a fine line between gossiping as well, because I've also seen, for example, people in the ex-Muslim community. Especially when they had referring some people to certain aspects for kind of their own dating thing going on. But essentially, there is I would say a negative aspect of no gossip rule. What I mean by that is like also you kind of have to also be honest about people's flaws as well. And when they are strong emphasizing only speak of something good in somebody, is also a problem. It's like, do you really know what like that person is like fully? It's like also warning people also in a sense of dangers that can come by. Like for example, I think watched a girl about her journey through the Muslim world, and basically she getting referred by people that been in prison and etc. Criminals in a certain aspect of it, and and the generally the mothers that is responsible for this finding our wife shenanigans, they never spoke ill of their sons in that regard. So it's a dualistic aspect of this. There's one rule to say don't speak ill of old people. Fair enough. But at the same time, we don't want people to get harmed as well.
One way that I love to look at it, if I remember to look at it that way, is like would not want myself or my children to be painted in a certain light. So we should think of each other that way as well, I think. Trying to protect each other's images. I mean, because we're all failing at something. We're all trying to do better, to overcome our obstacles. And God is always letting Satan, bring these things to the surface, so that way, first we can become aware that this wickedness exists within ourselves. And because then once we gain awareness that it's there, I think the sincere will do what they can to overcome it, and all in their own time, and we can't see what's in somebody else's chest. We don't know what's in their heart. And I think, this was on purpose for many reasons. We're not meant to know what's within somebody else's framework. Only the Creator, not even the angels knew. Not even the angels could see what was hidden inside our chests. And God told them, you don't know what I know. But yeah, I think we should, be good towards each other, better towards each other, and be more protective over, like public shaming and, things of that sort.
Important to note too is 1036 is a commandment from God, where conjecture is no substitute for the truth. And as we know, we must follow the truth and really have it lead our lives, right? Like when we look at information, we have to verify ourselves based on the truth. This type of gossiping, right? Like it's often with the intent to talk ill of somebody, and without the proper information or the person even involved in the conversation. A lot of these issues and problems would be eliminated if we just involve the individual should it rise up, and talk to them on a basis to clarify, right? Like if we hear some ill intent conversation going on, talk to the individual, address it head on, right? Not only will the truth is often very different than what's being being talked about, and then on top of that, you can kind of squash the claims immediately as a community.
I kind of feel like not repeating it is like the best course, just because, like, if you go to the individual, I mean, if anything is to be said, I think it should be to the person that's saying whatever's being said. It's just a kind reminder, to be careful of the things that they're saying. But if you go to the individual and, it's going to stir up animosity, and I just feel like, kind of going to the source of the issue is, the best course. There's no, like, any more spreading of anything. There's no, like, monkey in the middle relaying messages and, getting everybody in such a big mess, a big heated mess. So if you just, like, attack it where it's coming from, not attack, but, like, and of course, I think somebody that fears God and is sincere, if you go to them respectfully, kindly, and just give a kind reminder that that they'll take a second glance at, what they're doing.
I would say.
Go ahead, brother. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Hey, just really quick. So the problem with that approach is someone who is being victimized now in essence has to defend themselves and this and that. which I see as kind of could be problematic. And you actually see this in the media. Let's say, there is an allegation that Justin, someone has accused you of punching babies in the face, right? And you know it's nonsense. And now I say, hey, you know what? We need to have a meeting to discuss, if Justin thinks it's okay to punch babies in the face, right? We'd be portraying you in a bad light by merely even having to have you, defend this, that you're against this position and this and that. And it actually plays into the very hands of the people who are trying to slander, right? Because then people are going to have this bad take that even if they, you adequately defend yourself, they're like, well, why is this accusation being made in the first place, right? It taints the individual's name. I think in regards to these like personal matters, it's best to just keep them, personal. Now, if the person is broadcasting it and they're, either the individual who, the accusations against, or the one who's making the accusation, then it's like, okay, now it's like a public thing. But if only one side is making these kind of false accusations, I think, yeah, what Brandy said makes sense. Like you want to just squish it from that angle, so then that way it doesn't end up, continuing to victimize the the individual that has the accusations against them. Elham, you're gonna comment?
Yeah, no, that's actually a very good point, because imagine having to like defend yourself, and sometimes it's an emotional thing. Like somebody comes in and they come with some absurd accusation, like you did, we heard you did this, and people get flustered, and then they start scrutinizing every single thing you say, and it makes sense to just like nip it in the bud. Like you either have evidence, or we're just going to ignore this. I think that makes sense for the peace of mind of everybody. But with regards to well, the comment I wanted to make was, there's this thing where uh submitters are very trusting of other submitters, and they think that submitters can't like make a mistake or lie. You know what I mean? Like God bless the submitters, they have very good thoughts about each other. But the thing is that sometimes when a submitter comes and says, "Oh, so and so said or did this," we kind of take that all as the truth. You know what I mean? Because like, well, this person wouldn't lie, and da 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 and things like that. And the fact is, hey, sometimes people do let their biases get to them, and sometimes it's not even that. It's just we make mistakes. Sometimes people make mistakes or misunderstand situations, and if we don't verify the information or just accept it, we could be hurting ourselves or others. So that's something I wanted to share, because I've come across that from personal experiences as well.
Peace be upon you, everybody. So if I may add, if I understand, so I think there's been a focus on, which I think makes sense, when there's an original source of information, right? And you hear it through the grapevine per se, right? Not from the source, but from somebody else. At some point interacting with the source to remind them. So if they are spreading something that lacks, they're spreading conjecture, right? Then you go to the source and remind them with kind enlightenment, as we're asked to do. And that's, I think, part of what we're asked to do as submitters. But I think we should also highlight that so not the source, but the person you actually heard it from, right? The actual grapevine you heard it from, that in itself is an opportunity to remind as well, because you can help remind that person how they should be dealing with information as well, right? If they heard it and they spread it to you, but they didn't verify themselves, that is an opportunity to remind them of the law, of the enlightening law. So I just want to highlight that it's not just the source that can benefit from a reminder. It's everyone involved in the situation.
Comment. Anyone else want to chime in on this, or comment or question regarding any of the other verses? So we read from 24, 16 through 26. can't remember who made the comment regarding this, but there's this concept of what justifies true belief. How can we come to say, okay, yeah, this is true? And in the context of this is in the context of adultery, the minimum requirement, the minimum requirement that God is setting forth is you need to have 4 witnesses, that can testify that yes, they saw with their own eyes this very act. Um, and to me, again, this kind of indicates that this is more of a concern regarding the uh, how things are viewed publicly. That if someone is committing a sin, in isolation on their own, it's between them and God. Um, in that sense, where they're hurting their soul, God's going to hold them accountable. But it only becomes a factor when it becomes um, a publicly displayed act. Then it has to be accounted for. But yeah, it's just interesting that how many the requirement. I'll make a tangential comment. So there's this concept regarding the hadith transmission. Okay, and they were saying, okay, well, how many witnesses do you need in order for it to be considered like trustworthy? And one of the arguments that some individuals try to make, they're saying, look, you need at least 4 witnesses. Okay. And their argument towards that was like, look, if you need 4 witnesses for the chain of transmission, basically no hadith meets that standard and it destroys the entire sunnah. Something as low as this wasn't enough for them to basically be able to justify the hadith corpus. There's even a comment that says even the requirement of 2 witnesses was basically most of the hadith corpus would be thrown out. Lisa, if you can unmute, I'm not following your logic here. So for those who are following in the chat, Lisa's making it equating doxing with gossip. And I'm confused. Lisa, are you saying that basically you're pro doxing?
Peace be upon everyone. No, I am not. I'm just trying to reflect on how you guys treated doxing in the past and just checking whether this is still the case when someone makes a mistake of putting up or knowing somebody else trying to dox another person. And does this other person seen as supporting that person? You know what I'm getting at, right? And my question.
Oh, good.
My question is just that would a whole server be responsible for the action of one troublemaker?
Yeah, so regarding this specific, right? If someone let's just talk into generality, then we'll get into the specifics. If someone is generally saying, "Look, we don't tolerate, gossip or doxing and this and that," and you have an individual who's doing it, then yeah, that individual should be addressed. But the now regarding the specific, the issue was, at least in the past, was when we had this conversation, we spent multiple hours trying to convince certain individuals that doxing shouldn't be tolerated. It wasn't portrayed in the sense where it's like, hey, look, we're going to address this one person, make sure they don't do it. It was the fact of, hey, what's the big deal? Right. And it's like, to me, that's the equivalent of saying, hey, look, there's one guy on the server, they're slandering, they're gossiping. And then, someone asking me, hey, you should, talk to this person or remove those comments. And I say, hey, what's the big deal? Right.
It wasn't actions taken.
After like 5 hours of discussion, and it ended with basically saying, hey, what's the big deal?
I think that was only with that one person, but I took action immediately. But that conversation you had with that other person is separate thing. And the point is, I felt like you overlooked on what was done and dragged on with something else that you could drag on, trying to make us look bad. at least at that time.
We can have a conversation after the Quran study regarding more of the specifics, but in short, I mean the what you're bringing up was a long conversation of specifically myself trying to convince other parties that we shouldn't tolerate doxing on a server, and it was a lot of pushback towards that concept. So if you're saying that you're in agreement that doxing shouldn't be tolerated, I'm 100% with you.
The problem is I don't think that you appreciate that how brand new that server was, and neither of us actually knew what doxing was until McLinkin threatened to dox me, to show me what it really is. So it's only up to that point I realized what you guys are talking about. As far as I was concerned, it was just a photo, a fancy dress photo. I don't even know what is the issue. That's why lots of us are confused. If there was nothing in the photo, why react?
So again,
Peace.
we can talk about the specifics.
Sure,
I think
sure.
after study. But yeah. Go ahead, Bruna.
No, I think that I can piggyback right off that, which is if I'm understanding Lisa, I think the sister's saying that maybe it's worth it to rehab that conversation now that what doxing really means is more understood. Maybe that's what's being said. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, well, yeah, I know. The thing is, you guys understood exactly what doxing was. It's us who were oblivious. At least I was.
Do we want to have this conversation in front of everybody who don't know the context during the Grand Quran
The
study? Is this
context
the
is
best
in
use
the
of
chat.
Quran studies?
Everybody is reading. But yeah, I agree. We're gonna have this conversation later. So yeah, I'm good.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, good one.
Peace be upon you, God. Peace be upon you. God bless you. I want to make a comment on verse 19 and 22, 21, God willing. ربي أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون. God is telling us here that those who love to see immorality spread among the believers have incurred a painful retribution in this life and in the hereafter. God knows while you do not know. God covers you with his grace and mercy. God is most kind towards the believers, most merciful. 21 says, "O you who believe, do not follow the steps of Satan. Anyone who follows the steps of Satan should know that he advocates evil and vice. If it were not for God's grace towards you and his mercy, none of you would have been purified. But God purifies whomever he wills. God is hearer, no one. It means that, from our understanding, it means that we could have people who, claims or think that they are believers, still having this kind of behavior towards their brothers or sisters. Because if truly we are believers, we need to have a pure soul towards one another. We have to love one another as a true family. So for me to want to see somebody doing evil, that would be a bad thing of me. And God is cautioning me or cautioning us that people with such mindset, people with such attitude, to be careful. Otherwise, the devil will mislead them, despite the fact that they think that they are believers doing righteous work. So any bad attitude, like God has said, bad behaviors, all bad behaviors are condemned. In Surah 17, verse 38, we have to be watchful of what we do towards one another. If we believe as God is addressing those who believe in these verses, we should know that following the steps of Satan, it is Satan that will, whisper or make the believers do certain things that are evil. And you cannot be a believer in God and then on the other side, going with Satan. That is, I can say, idol worship, because you cannot hold two masters at the same time. If you want to believe, you should believe. If you want to disbelieve, you should disbelieve. You cannot be a believer and then follow the steps of Satan. And God says anyone who follows the steps of Satan should know that he advocates evil and vice. Would a believer want to be seen advocating evil and vice? I should always think of myself. And then if I see rather a believer or a submitter, pressing towards this path, what I should do is instead call him rather than me being seen doing this, or another believer committing such a bad attitude or a heinous crime. So this is my advice. I want us to always be careful of what we do if we want to remain believers in the sight of God. Thank you.
I wanted to make a comment regarding 21. It says the subtitle says the devil encourages baseless accusations. Oh, you believe, do not follow the steps of Satan. Anyone who follows the steps of Satan should know that he advocates evil and vice. Were not for God's grace towards you and his mercy, none of you would have been purified. But God purifies whomever he wills. God is here, knower. It's interesting that there's this human tendency that when it comes to gossip, to rumors, uh these kind of like hidden secrets, people are just drawn towards it. You look at, like, say, the gossip magazines or the reality TV shows, and these celebrity kind of situations. um that this is something that Satan loves utilizing. But the question I have is, what is it in the human psyche that makes that so alluring for people? Why is it that this kind of baseless accusation draws in so many people? I don't know. I know we got some psychologists and stuff on uh, the VC. I'd love to know, what is it about that is so tantalizing for the masses? Anyone has any thoughts on it?
Please, Douglas, I don't think we can hear you, brother. You're saying something.
I saw Douglas unmuted, but I didn't know if that was just me. See? And-
Brother, if you're struggling with your audio, just leave the call and then come right back in, and it should help it, God willing.
Bismillah.
Yay, success.
Praise be to God.
Alhamdulillah. Bismillah. No, what I was going to comment on, God willing, is the notion that some people actually engage in, they undermine morality. In other words, they actually direct people towards immorality by claiming to expose it. there have been a number of studies within psychology and mind control that point out that the constant so-called exposure of immorality in others actually has a way of undermining it in the entire society to such an extent where, like Brother Peter was saying, the media, it's become normative in the media to constantly engage in gossip, constantly engage in exposés, constantly engage in slander about individuals' private behavior to such an extent that it's become quote unquote normative. And what it does is that this is a satanic strategy to promote immorality by claiming to expose and falsely accuse others of morality. And people tend to, it's like, for example, if a person loves that type of stuff, the dicey stuff, they want to see the next episode. And ironically enough, Satan is so evil. These people are so evil. Do what they do. They actually monetize. They monetize this bogus exposure morality to make money off of it. Peace. Thank you. I hope what I was saying contributed. God knows best.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And then you think like, you know, the people like to make connections with other individuals. So if you can find a link to somebody else and they are practicing immorality, then it makes it easier for the person that made that connection to also incorporate that way of being into their own lives.
Yeah, the question I have is, God, the creation of a human being is a perfect design. I think, any drive we have, God created it for the good. It's up to us if we use it for the good or the evil. And my thought is, it's why is it that there's this predisposition in human beings towards rumors and gossip? Like, is there such thing as a community, a culture of people that don't have this intrinsic kind of like interest on that? And if this is something that's just universal, the my question is, it's like, where did it come from? What was the reason that we have this drive towards wanting to be entertained by rumors and gossip and this and that? Is it purely just evil, or is it something that it was meant for a good reason and it's just being repurposed by the devil towards something that's just going to hurt our souls?
Peace. God knows best. I think that there is a strange curiosity of sorts regarding what is hidden, regarding what is unknown. And people have a proclivity to want to be in on it, to want to get information or believe that they are finding something out that others don't know. Or maybe they can get a tidbit of information that others may not be aware of. Now, in listening to what Brother Peter was saying and Sister Brandy, everyone, actually, this may be a little awkward and it's open for comments and corrections. This, in fact, reminds me of what happened in paradise. Uh, Satan essentially, this is what he did to Adam and Eve. He came to them with, let's call it a kind of slang. He came to them with a great lie. He came to them with a lie, something that he posed as secret, and you all got to find this out. Satan came to Adam and Eve and told them that God, praise God, God be glorified, that God had a secret, God was hiding something from them, that he did not want them to attain immortality, what have you. So it's this curiosity, this proclivity to try to probe and get more information, to get more. I maybe may have a little more knowledge, and for a significant number of people, you see, in fact, they believe that their theo, so to speak, or their philosophy is that there's a tremendous power hidden in evil, that it's through the probing into what is evil and forbidden that one gains power and knowledge. That may be a stretch of sorts, but I'm basing it on the idea of a curiosity toward what is hidden, what otherwise would have been secret or unknown. God knows best. Peace.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, brother.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on the gossiping thing. I think it's just survival, like at its core. Like human beings are very social, and a human being without a social network will die, more or less. Especially pre, I guess, like agriculture, let's say, right? Like in back in the hunter-gatherer days. And I think our society was also much smaller back then. So you could actually, I think it was a kind of um, attempt at safety where you want to know who's allied with who, who's doing what, just to be like on the safe side. Thank you. That's it.
It seems to me like this behavior though is more like a self-exalting kind of behavior. Just from what just knowing from personal experience and witnessing certain behaviors before previously. It just seems like because like what is the lie going to do, or being involved in like knowing something that no other people don't know, or being in a group, like I feel like it's gives this sense of like self-importance and or like like a self-exaltation, bringing oneself up to almost like a self-glorifying behavior, if I'm making any sense.
An important thing to note is, many topics have been around this. We see that like a purveyor of information is somebody who has power, right? Peter talked about this in one of his articles. We see Suleiman, right? Like clearly has the authority and power. He's like, where's the hoopoe? Like if he doesn't come around, right, I'm going to kill him. And then the hoopoe comes. He says, I have something you don't. The power dynamic shifts, right? This is also the case with individuals. If I can give you a sliver of truth that is unbeknownst to you, at that point in time, I can control your actions and deeds. We were talking about this with fortune tellers and all that fun stuff, right? They capitalize on a truth that seems so significant and so particular to the individual that nobody could find it. At that point in time, the information afterwards can drive you to do something that you wouldn't do beforehand, right? It may motivate you to hate somebody, to dislike somebody, to essentially do something that you wouldn't have done prior, just due to that knowledge. So, as brother Douglas pointed out, right? Like Satan used this to capitalize on something prior, right? Adam and Eve would not have gone to that tree if it wasn't for something that Satan alluded to, right? He said he had the power of information that they did not know, and this motivated them to go against God's authority, whereas prior they may not have been motivated. So it's important to realize that like people use information to self validate or self authorize themselves as somebody bigger.
Remember, yeah. That's fine. No, it's just we cannot.
Medina, you have a hot mic. I don't know if anybody did anybody bring up the example of Joseph in regards to gossiping at all today?
No, but was Justin? Were you done with your comment?
Yeah, I was done. Praise God.
Okay. No, Elham, if you want to bring that up.
Yeah, because it was interesting. So everybody knows the story, right? Joseph, he's in the house. He's a servant there. Man of the house is gone. It's him and the governor's wife, and she tries to seduce him. Doesn't work out. She gets caught. It's embarrassing for her, right? But this happened within the household. Somehow it got out of the household, and then it said the women in the city were gossiping. Oh, the governor's wife is in love with her servant and whatnot. And I guess she found out people were all gossiping and talking about this and whatnot. So she felt embarrassed and wanted to prove that, hey, listen, I'm not just this thirsty, lonely, crazy lady. Like this, like you gotta understand, this guy's hella beautiful, which led her to gather a bunch of women and make this scheme. So I would reflect on that and wonder. I wonder if maybe rumors hadn't gotten out, or you know, the gossip hadn't leaked out of the household, and everyone in town was talking and people were chattering, and you know, she may not have felt the need to do that, right? Maybe on her own she would have reflected and said, yeah, man, what am I doing, etc., etc., and whatnot. Couple lessons I get from here is, one is when you spread information, even if it's true, if it paints somebody in a bad light, or you know, it's embarrassing for them, we should it's better not to, because this may escalate a situation or actually may create more problems, right? And it feels harder to do when it is true, because you're like, hey, what I'm sharing is the truth, you know what I mean? But we got to be careful, and I'm also talking to myself, right? The other thing is the blessing that is being able to, or having sinned in private and God didn't expose our sins, right? That too is a blessing, that God doesn't embarrass us for every sin that we've done, and often lets us privately and quietly reflect and repent and reform. That's my comment.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
On the same verse describing that Satan advocates evil and wise, I always look at that. It's two words in here is used. The evil, it seems to be that is something you do to others, and it's heavier damage, and wise is more like it involves your individual's personal failings or bad habits, smoking, drinking, and gossips. And there was a time that, you know, before the social media, most people were involved with vice, what bad habits, you know, sitting around gossiping and all that. You know, there were individuals who are drawn to it, and then there are those who are drawn towards evil things, towards others and all that. But ever since the social media, it seems to me that we are forced, everyone, all public is forced to deal with it because it's not a private thing. It's like everything is forced on us to make some sort of a judgment. It is right in our face as it happens, and it's almost feels like you're involved with the whole thing. So beside the gossip that has gone up 10 times or more, or vice that happens, uh, and so even those who were not after it, who were not did not have the tendency to do that, now it's almost forced on you to somehow respond one way or another, make a judgment one way or another, or realize the moral failings when you don't respond to some drastic, wise, or evil thing that is happening. So it's really and I think the fact that we all have a gen within us as a companion, we have the tendency already implanted in us, and but never in such grand scale as we are faced to today. So but yeah, I think before social media, it was more based on the individual wise, whatever that you are involved. Now we are facing evils that is happening around the world, and the stands, and so you know a lot more, and automatically you're deciding one way or another. So we are faced with a lot bigger challenges today, I believe, than those who in our fathers and grandfathers were. So may God help us in that sense. But I wonder what you guys think between the two words here, evil and wise, whether time and had anything to do with it. Let's say the 100 years ago, was it more evil things happening, or was it more as individuals who make fall into our lack of the weaknesses and all that, fall into vice, committing vice? Back to you.
I think I think back then it was a simpler evil. Now you have a more complex evil. It's technology and this and that. It's all evil, but with the advent of technology and just newer things, and I would say yes.
Salam alaikum. God willing, I would add that, and this I think may go back to Peter's question. God created in our nature, our fitra, a basic curiosity, a curiosity to know. And human beings feel a sense of reward when they learn something new, whenever we get new information. And Satan, being aware of this, uses what could be called as a form of mind control, a satanic hypnotism, where even though basic fundamental curiosity is God's given, what Satan does is that he pollutes it or associates it with evil and vice. And one means by which he does this, and this goes back to the media, to mind control, is that, for example, he takes figures that are widely known, and what he does is that he broadcasts these rumors. He lies about them, and this is like perverting or distorting the basic human desire to know. you see, and luring people towards what is evil and towards vice. He takes it and it becomes seductive, right? He takes it, and as he does, God, his proclamation that he would lurk for the human being, he would destroy our, not destroy our nature, but he would pervert us. Things which God implanted in our nature, to read, to learn about the creation, to seek knowledge, this curiosity that we have for more information about new information, he uses this in terms of evil. I think most of us have heard the adage, more or less something similar to it: curiosity killed the cat. Well, we know obviously that's not true. Obviously, curiosity does not kill a cat. What I'm saying is that this curiosity, when one is not seeking God's protection and not a submitter, this basic curiosity can be, if you will, it can be perverted by Satan's whispers. Peace. Thank you.
Peace.
Peace.
Just out of curiosity, isn't that I don't know, the forbidden tree was called the tree of knowledge or something?
Only in the Bible that it has a different take on how it's portrayed in the Quran.
Peace be upon you all. I want to make a comment on verse 22, inshallah, God willing. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Those among you who are blessed with resources and wealth shall be charitable towards their relatives, the poor, and those who have emigrated for the sake of God. They shall treat them with kindness and tolerance. Do you not love to attain God's forgiveness? God is forgiven, most merciful. What I understand here is, coupled with the verses, with other verses in the Quran, in Surah 2, where God, uh, taught us or told us to give charity for our own good. And I understand here that when those who are blessed with resources, God is the one who enriches the people. And when God enriches you, He wants you to touch lives that He has not given directly this money to. God could give it to them, but He wants to test you. He wants to give it to you to feel the blessing of having this money, this wealth. What do you feel when God bless you with this money? When God enriches you? What you feel when you are happy, you're able to solve a lot of problems for yourself, your family, and relatives, then God wants you to give to those who are in need so that they will feel, they may not even feel that much happiness that you are, when of you that you are rich. But when you bless them from God's provisions to you, you are relieving so much stress, so much burden on them. And do you know the importance and essence of what you have done to yourself and to those whom you have touched with God's resources upon you? You feel happy, you feel secure by God's leave. God will enrich you more because God has told us in Surah 57 that when you give, you are like giving God loan of righteousness. Because When you take out from his resources to you, he says he will multiply it for you manifold. That means you're not losing anything. Instead, you will even gain more. And God wants you to have more of his blessings upon you by giving unto others from what he has given you. He did not say, give out all that he has given you. No, he said, do not be extravagant. Do not be stingy, in moderation. So I want to call our attention. Those who are blessed with resources should always feel, happy, free to touch the lives of those who do not have anything. And do not reproach them because you are not giving this money to show off. And you are not better. You're not better off because you have this, because God has enriched you and he did not enrich others. You're not better off. It's a test upon you and it's a test upon those who do not have. I just wish to remind us all of this benefits and importance of being charitable in the cause of God. Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments or questions regarding verses 22 through 26? I feel like we spent a good amount of time talking about the thing through 21, but yeah, if anyone has any comments regarding that, other verses, to bring those up.
So could you just go over what verses we read in addition?
We read from 16 through 26, but we mostly were talking about verses 26 through 21. Yeah, I wanted to know if anyone wanted to make any comments or questions regarding verses 22 through 26. I'll make a comment. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, those among you who are blessed with resources and wealth shall be charitable towards the relatives, the poor, and those who have emigrated for the sake of God. I found this interesting because it looks like there is, because before I thought like sadaqah was like voluntary, and I believe it still is, right? But from what I understand, God is basically saying to wealthier believers is that, hey, I'm expecting you to be more generous than others, which is, I believe, a fair trade-off, right? Because the understanding is, well, God gave me this. I didn't attain this of myself. And if God is going to bless me, then the expectation is that I should use this in the cause of God, right? Which is kind of what we see what David and Solomon did. Go ahead, brother. That was pretty much it.
Praise God. Yeah, I want to make a comment regarding just 26, where it says the bad woman for the bad men, the bad men for the bad women, and then the good women for the good men, the good men for the good women. The two things regarding this. One is, in the aspect of picking a spouse, the importance of picking someone that's going to help increase in righteousness, right? That God says what the minimum requirement is as far as who we're permitted to marry, right? But that's like the floor. The aspect is, when we're looking for a spouse, the number one criteria we should be asking is this someone who's going to help us, help you grow as an individual in righteousness. Because just because something is permissible doesn't mean that, hey, you settle for the bare minimum. And I think personally, if someone makes that their priority in the sense of judging someone by righteousness, that God is going to give them the perfect spouse because their priorities are set straight. But then we can extrapolate this more beyond just the spouse, is also in the context of just who we choose to surround ourselves with. There's a popular anecdote. It says you're the average of your 5 closest friends. And one of the blessings of having the server is that in life we're surrounded, we're limited by proximity. Who do you have within your circle? But when you expand that globally, and you can connect with people all over the world, you find individuals who really want to strive in the cause of God, who want have a deeper knowledge of God's word, Scripture, the application of it, and it is a blessing to be able to have this online community because it allows us to expand who we associate with, to find those individuals, right? Because anyone who knows, not everyone in your day to day is going to have the same passion towards the religion. It's not practical, right? You'll have people that they're going to be within your vicinity that, God willing, want to worship God alone, but are they going to want to be talking about God 24/7? Right? Maybe not. But having this online community, it kind of opens up to that. And when you're around other people who you see striving in the cause of God, it makes it two things. One, it gives us an aim to want to strive harder, but then two, it makes it within like a practical realm. Because when you see someone else do something, you realize like, hey, if they can do it, I can do it too. So I do think it is important in the sense of who we surround ourselves with, and it's what a blessing it is to be able to have like this online Quran study where we have submitters all over the world, that we can engage with. That's all.
Yeah, peace be upon you. I also want to make a comment on that verse 24. Yeah, 26, inshallah. What I want to say here is God is encouraging us to be amongst ourselves more than we should be with bad people or with maybe the disbelievers or the hypocrites. When a believer is with a believer, they will always be talking about God and doing things that are righteous, that will, make, take them closer to God. Imagine when a man is married to a believing woman, their home will be more peaceful than when a believer is married to a disbeliever. Here, if we look at Surah 9, verse 67 to 80, no, 67 to 68, and verse 70, God talks about the hypocrites in those verses, saying that they belong with one another. And he says that the hypocrite man and the hypocrite woman belong with each other. They advocate evil and prohibit righteousness, and they are stingy. They forgot God, so he forgot them. The hypocrites are truly wicked. God promises the hypocrite man and the hypocrite woman, as well as the disbelievers, the fire of hell, wherein they abide forever. It suffices them. God has condemned them. They have incurred an everlasting retribution. So when the believers in verse 26 are together, you see the bad man, God is matching the bad man and the bad woman have to be together. A bad man cannot be with a good woman, or a good man cannot be with a bad woman. It has to be a bad man with a bad woman, and a good woman with a good man. This is how God matches the people. So we have to look at what is good for us, good for our souls, so that the life will be much better and much easier for all of us. Thank you.
Another way I looked at these verses, the good men for the good women, etc., etc. One way I looked at these verses was, if you want, because a lot of people are, single people, like, hey, I want a good spouse. one of the things I learned was if you want a good spouse, then you have to be good yourself, right? So I guess that's additional incentive to be a good and righteous individual, because the better you are, then God willing, the spouse will be good as well. So little bit of advice for all the single people.
Peace. I wonder also if so there's like the if we look at it in terms of compatibility, the good man and the good woman being together, that is most compatible, and even the hypocrite for the hypocrite, that's most compatible for them. I think it's a different lens than saying that God's like design is that good men will only marry good women and vice versa. And same for the hypocrites. Because, for example, the wife of Pharaoh, she ends up being a winner, but she's not married to a good man. So I don't know that what's being said here is that the design is that, you have certitude that if you are a good man, you will be given a good woman. I don't know if that's exactly what's being said here. It could, in your path, just like in her path, was having a bad man be her husband. Just opening it up for thoughts. I'm just thinking of this now, so don't hold it too tightly.
That's a wonderful reflection, brother. God bless you.
Yeah,
You
I would
also have the
agree.
example of sorry. Go ahead, sister.
No, I've talked. You haven't spoke today. Go ahead.
Thank you. We have also the example of Lot, and I mean it doesn't specifically she being a bad woman, but doesn't say it. But it seems that the outcome can be being that she was not one of the ones who was saved. So the circumstances is reversed. So yeah, it is a good question, and I see that we have examples of both sides believing being married with the disbeliever, and the disbeliever being sometimes a tyrant, even to that effect. Yeah.
Peace. And just to add, and what I'm gonna say is like conjecture, really, because I'm not basing it on a verse, but so Pharaoh does die, presumably before his wife, like he gets drowned, right? Lot's wife dies before him. We know that. Like he leaves. Ultimately, she's I think turned to stone. But regardless, she loses then during the punishment of Sodom. So my point is, sure, Lot outlives his wife. Pharaoh's wife outlives Pharaoh. It'd be conjecture to say that then they are given the good, compatible, righteous partner. Like that would be all conjecture. So again, just going back to like I don't know if the verse specifically means like the design equals you will, a good person will marry a good person. Because also you can be tested by having a bad partner. Like that could be part of your test. Like saying, no, I love God more than I love my partner or something, right? And ultimately, I don't know, divorcing or something.
Maybe what's crossing my mind is, I mean, because we can change our state of being, so one day I could be a hypocrite, but but then learn that I'm hypocritical and by God's leave change ways about me that make me hypocritical. So maybe like if one marries in that state, they will attract and be attracted to a like-minded individual and marry a hypocrite. But then, let's say they change one day, and then all of a sudden they don't have that interest in that person anymore because they're both on different wavelengths, different beliefs and such. And but I was also going to say that I know there are submitters here that they married, they had different beliefs, but then they come to submission. Their spouses have not accepted submission and don't believe that Rashad was the messenger, or some even go as far as mocking the messenger, but they still remain married. And I think that's a command that we should, that if a situation comes about like that, that they as long as the marriage isn't like bringing the person down, steering them down the wrong path or something like that, that they should keep that marriage as is.
Okay, will it be okay if I maybe say maybe it is on the day of resurrection, the day of judgment, that God will match the good man for the good woman and the bad man for the bad woman, or something like that? I'm just looking at the verses before it, uh, maybe to just get a flow. When it says, the day will come when their own tongues, hands, and feet will bear witness to everything they have done. On that day, God will require them fully for their work, and they will find out that God is the truth. Now, probably this could be on the day of judgment, because I was also looking at a prophet of God, Noah. His wife was also a bad woman. And so there are so many verses we could bring to see that in this world, truly, some righteous men, good men, were not really uh, pleased with their wives, and some women, good women, were not also pleased with their men because they were also back to them. Thank you.
We have the example of this in the day of resurrection, or in heaven, Surah 56, which Golan says, with 35 says, we created for them mates, never previously touched, perfectly matched. So this is talking about the high heaven. I think similarly to lower heaven, we have those things as well. We have those are matched for them. So matched to me is believing people, right? It's matched with believing people in heaven, and it's not matched with disbelieving. So yeah, it could be extrapolated that this perfectly matched, or good people for people, or good people could be ultimately about talking about the hereafter. Even a lot of believers, or one way or the other, they can never get married, or their spouse dies and they're alone. So so if they never get married, who are they going to perfectly get matched with? So this is talking about the hereafter, obviously, those verses, but it's also talking about in that context.
Is I think the 24, 26. It's I think it's just a general rule. I don't think it's a hard, fast rule. Say that like, oh, if your spouse is bad, then you are bad too, or anything like that. Or if you're good, then you can only get a good spouse and this and that, whatnot. Saying as a general rule, and looking at the context of the whole surah, right? It's that the whole point is that righteous people want to marry other righteous people, right? So if you're a righteous, chaste person, you're going to be looking towards a spouse that emulates certain values, right? God-fearing, chaste, doesn't engage in unrighteous activities and things like that. I think that's generally the whole point, right? But also in the element that when you do get married, there's always a risk involved. Like, hey, what is this person really like behind closed doors, and what are they going to be like in the future? Things like that. Those things are out of our control, and we don't know, right? But as a general thing, as a general rule, for sure. I see it as
Yeah.
referring to this life.
Yeah, but we have examples of people that got married and then got the message, or were interested in, and they became believers, weren't really practicing a righteous life because they may be in a situation. But nonetheless, once they get the message, they change their lives. So it doesn't happen to both couples. Sometimes it happens to only one. And under these circumstances, you would think, okay, is this something that they shouldn't? God allowed it, so they still do both disbelievers or whatnot. I don't know. And we have the example as said. Pharaoh was no believer. And her wife, his wife was one, but they got married. So
Yes. So with the whole, I mean, we don't know when Pharaoh's wife became a believer. We just know that she was a good believer. I mean, it may be that she wasn't a believer, and then with Moses coming and giving the proofs, maybe she was among those who believed, but obviously couldn't leave because her husband. Like, we don't know the full circumstances there. And again, like I said, as a general rule, and I don't see this as a verse to make an equation and come to a conclusion like, oh, your spouse is bad, therefore you're bad. I'm saying not to do that, right? I see this as a general rule that God is saying, right? That the good women are for the good men, and vice versa, and the bad people are for the bad people. I mean, as a general concept, this is also true in the Quran too, with that the wicked must remain with the opposition, where bad and evil people tend to congregate together, and things of this nature, right? And the other point of the verse is also that if you have a good righteous couple that are God fearing, this and that, they're not going to be engaging in adultery. That's why it says the latter innocence of such accusations. They have attained forgiveness and a generous reward. So again, the comment with try your best to be a good person is because then God will put good people around you as well, right? Including your spouse, God willing. Again, I'm not making a hard, fast rule that it's impossible to, because we have those examples in the Quran, right? God controls everything. If He decides that's part of your test, and why you may be tested like that, hey, God knows. Maybe there is something about you that requires you to go through that to purify yourself. I don't know. But again, as a general thing, the verse seems to be saying the good for the good, the bad for the bad. I think actually, Peter, I saw you on mute. I think you had a comment. Go ahead, brother.
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize my mic was muted. My bad. Yeah. No, I was just asking. I had a question or something I want to throw out there regarding verse 25. Verse 25, it ends. It says, "God is the truth," and I wanted to know what you guys' thoughts are regarding the implications of God using this title for Himself. What can we extrapolate from that? Because I think that that's a really obviously it's a profound statement, but what are the implications that come to mind for you guys?
The quick one that came to my mind is that God is reality. I don't know how to explain it more than that, really. Just that God is reality, right? And I would, because the reason I think this is because, like, if you think back in linear time, at some point there was nothing. Like, it was just God. He didn't create. At some point in time, God created His first creation. When that was, I don't know, eons ago, an incomprehensible time. I have no idea. But at some point, it was just God's. So, like, what does that environment look like? What does God's environment look like? Like, You know what I mean? So to me, when I hear that, like, God is the truth, I just imagine like reality is God, and I have a hard time putting it into like words. But yeah.
My understanding is that this is in correlation to verse 24. It says, "The day will come when their own tongues, hands, and feet bear witness to anything they have done. On that day, God will requite them fully for their works, and they will find out God is the truth." So, in my understanding is just is the quality that has been elaborated here. That because what they have done is exposed, and God brings it out clearly, and they realize that God is just, despite the fact that they hate the fact that they are being exposed, but nonetheless they believe, and they all understand to believe to God's true qualities, and one that He is truthful. He does things, and he exposes them, and he also is merciful in other qualities that he has. But it's just a little bit late, and when they realize it on that day, that this is happening to their own volition, and this is their predicament because of that. Otherwise, people question, why God did this, why God did that. So when the truth comes out, everything is exposed, and they believe, okay,
Cool. Hope you
God,
guys are well.
our judgment is fair and correct. This is the correct judgment, and this we incurred it because of our action. Some of them say, "Oh, send us back" and whatnot, but they still believe that this is the truth and this is happening, and everything is shown to them. And this is one of God's qualities, because God, does everything for a good reason. He will show us all the reasons, and all the curtains will be pushed aside. So this is when everybody comes to the higher realization. Even those who end up in hell, they'll have a better understanding why things happen. They'll have a clear understanding of why things happen. And
Guys, assalamu alaikum. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry to interrupt, guys. Peace to you. I mean, very, very sorry to interrupt. Who's leading the Quran study here?
Dean, you got to wait your turn, brother. We don't just cut people off.
No, I understand, brother. But we have girls that are crying on that side because people are getting bombed with messages from people from the server, including myself, to say, listen, don't go with that server. You guys are hypocrites. They're hypocrites, etc. Brother, we are not God to be judging people. There's girls crying on that side.
Okay, brother. We can talk about this in private. I think you're basically being used as a pawn right now to just cause.
No one told me to come here. I came here by myself, right? I came here by myself.
Okay.
And I'm
Look,
receiving the
if you
same
want-
messages.
Okay, Dean, if you want, we can
I'm
go to a
receiving the
different
same
reset.
messages.
Okay. All right. I think that I that was my comment. That was my understanding when those verses says God is the truth, is that they come to that realization.
Peace.
Unfortunately, a little bit late.
So I'd love to add. So one thing that I think I appreciate, I'm hopeful for when anybody, be it an atheist, they say they're looking for truth, right? And they're sincere and like, I'm looking for truth. I'm a truth seeker. That's, even someone who's like who believes in scientism, the idea that like science is religion. They're like, I'm looking for truth, like capital T truth sincerely. There is a part of me that is optimistic about that, because whether they know it or not, if they're sincerely looking for truth, then what they're really saying is they're looking for God.
Yo, what's up, everybody? It's the Great Quran Study. What's up? Peace be upon you all. Peace be upon you. What's up? Greatness to God.
Thank you. We're getting a lot of that. Please continue.
I love y'all. I wish you could live in it. That's all that too. One live.
So that's one thing that I love. I think I have really like high optimism for when people say they're seeking truth. I take it as, okay, you're seeking God, whether you know it or not yet. So I'm very hopeful that they are indeed on the right path, even if theirs looks, however it might look. And right now they might not be reading scripture, but if their heart is set on seeking truth, then yeah. So that's one thing that I take from this verse. And then, so I guess, yeah, that's one thing. But another thing is like God is one, and God is capital T truth. So for one, okay, so those two things. But then also, God is all encompassing. And to me, and all that makes sense because, like, if I say I have truth and you say you have truth, well, the answer is by logic, by the way that we can all instinctively know the universe to work. It's like, okay, then the truth is you both have truth. So the real truth encompasses any other. It encompasses everything, right? Even if you say something is a falsehood, 1 + 1 = 3, that's false. Well, the truth is that that's false. So in the end, truth encompasses everything. And then furthermore, you're alive, I'm alive, and truth encompasses that. The truth is I'm alive, the truth is you're alive. So the capital T truth encompasses all life. So it makes sense that capital T truth is living. So yeah, so God being the truth to me makes sense in the unity of his names. And then another interesting thing for me to piggyback, I'll put that verse there, 21:22. I seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. If there were in them, in the heavens and the earth, other gods besides God, there would be chaos there would have been chaos. Glory be to God, the Lord with absolute authority. He is high above their claims. And what I hone in on is God is truth. So this idea that there would be multiple truths, right? Like that's chaotic. That's what I mean by instinctively, like we know there's one truth, and like that just it's instinctively it makes sense about how the universe is architected. Reality, as the brother said, the truth. Yeah, I'll stop there. Thanks for listening to the rant.
Peace be upon you. I want to reflect on verse 24. Start with it. The day will come, the day will come when their own tongues, hands, and faith will bear witness to everything they have done. Yes, when we all die, we cannot hide the truth from God because God is the all-knowing. Two, we have two recording angels. All our record is tied on our neck, and it will be made accessible to us on the day of resurrection. So how can we lie to God? Even if we wanted to lie on that day, God will even fill our mouths and makes those parts that probably we have used to commit those crimes to confess. In this world, the security have, the security agencies have a device that could make your body parts to fit against you, not your mouth. You'll be asked not to talk. The machine will read everything that you do. So this is in agreement with this verse that, yes, on the day of judgment, whether we like it or not, to speak the truth or not, our, whatever we do will be exposed on that day. So God is truthful. God is never unjust with anyone. This is what he has, repeatedly told us in the Quran. This is also guiding us that we must always try as much as possible to raise towards righteousness, to raise towards God's forgiveness, and repent and reform, so that on the day of judgment, the righteous works will far outweigh our evil or our sinful works. Thank you.
And my thought regarding this concept where it says God is the truth, one of the interpretations of this is that God is reality. that without God there is no reality, there is no existence. And then I like what Bruno said too. It's this shows that truth is an objective thing. It's not something that's subjective. It's not like, oh, your truth and my truth and this and that. There's actually a take regarding the verse 6103. So Surah 6 verse 103, it says that God encompasses all visions, but no one vision encompasses God. One of the interpretations of this is that obviously no one can fully grasp God's grandeur, his greatness, his majesty. But the other one is the fact that God sees everything. We can't even contemplate, what life is like in the eyes of someone else, let alone what's happening in the inner workings of, the unseen. But God, He's simultaneously witnessing everything. That's what's bringing this universe into existence. That if God was to not be the one to witness, therefore there would be no reality. Everything would cease to exist.
Why do you say that?
So there's this concept. It's called basically what brings reality into existence. And if you break it down, if there isn't an observer, there is no reality. The concept is, okay, well, who's observing the inner working of every cell, every atom? That it all draws back to God. And if God was to be removed from that equation, there would be no reality.
Like you would argue that doesn't exist, that phenomenon, whatever that it is.
Yeah, that there has to be an ultimate observer. Right? That's the only way that you can basically attest for any kind of reality.
I mean, we have angels and other things that also observe many things. Are they part of that, or no? Those are separate, and you're saying God is in addition.
I mean, we can be part of it, right? Like, say, for instance, I'm observing this Quran study right now, but the ultimate observer, right? The cause of all this, if you trace that back, the cause and effect, you get all the way back to God, right? That if it wasn't for God controlling everything, doing everything, watching everything, there would be no existence. If you look at, there's a verse that comes to mind, 1061. It's interesting. There's the connection between the observation and the reality. So in 1061, I'll put it in. It says, "You do not get into any situation, nor do you recite any Quran, nor do you do anything without us being witnesses thereof as you do it. Not even an atom's weight is out of your Lord's control, be it in the heavens and the earth, nor is there anything smaller than an atom or larger that is not recorded in a profound record." So notice the first part's talking about witnessing, right? And the second part's talking about control. This is a cliche thing, but the question, okay, if a tree falls and no one's there, does it make a sound? Um, the aspect is, if an event takes place, like you're talking about on the quantum realm, if there is an observer, right, then that event would never transpire. The question is, obviously, there's all these events that are happening that human beings aren't witnessing. So who's this ultimate one who witnesses everything? Right? That it all comes down to God. It's similar to the aspect of the immovable mover, right? The first cause, that you can say that it's, even if you go from the cause, it's okay. Someone has to witness this in order for this to even be a thing.
But witnessing can be an element, but I think in addition to witnessing, the cause, there should be a cause for an effect. So there should be one who actually not only observes, but controls and manages. Like you can have systems that work, but like even systems that humans design and make, you can initiate something, but you can not only initiate, you can be there and see, oh, it's working, it's fine, But you also have to have a built-in mechanism which you would be managed internally, or it needs to be managed by humans or other means. So it is not only witness, but also it is much more involved, I believe. I mean,
100%.
witnesses,
I think
witnessing is
so.
an element.
Here, I'll break it down in a way. It's not the fact that a witnessing is a passive event. Witnessing is actually an active event. There is something that's known as the double slit experiment. Okay, you shoot a photon through basically a single slit. Okay, and it's going to fall into a projector. You're going to see one slit. But if you shoot a photon through two slits, it simultaneously goes through both slits, right? So you see a wave of distribution of the photon. So it's simultaneously going through both slits. Now, if you put a device, a measurement, to observe the photon, okay, before it goes through the two slits, all of a sudden it becomes a deterministic outcome, and you see two slits basically projected onto the wall. Now, if you observe it after it goes through the two slits, so you know for a fact that it's only a wave of probability at this point. But before it hits the screen, right, the projection, what happens is that the photon will go back in time, realize something is observing it, go back in time, and become a deterministic outcome, right? So somehow the act of observing actually creates the reality.
I mean, assuming that there's no other observers, yes.
These things are happening, right? They're ending up becoming deterministic outcomes. When say for instance, time is moving, okay, as time is progressing, these waves of probabilities become deterministic outcomes. It looks like the way that they have to become deterministic is at some point some entity has to observe it.
Interesting. It seems like somewhat philosophical, but it's also it's one of those things. It's reality versus and philosophical at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. 'Cause, we get questioned on this. They say, "Hey, is God physical?" And they're thinking three-dimensional space, right? And you say, "No, God is the most physical because it's from God that we have reality." Right? Like we become the figment of imagination, right? In the mind of God, and God is the reality, right? So when it says God is the truth, that without God, all you have is falsehood. But falsehood is not real. Falsehood is an illusion. Right? There is no real thing as falsehood. It's a conceptual idea that doesn't actually exist. That's what makes it falsehood.
It's incorrect. Incorrect. It's just in the wrong answer, basically.
Yeah,
you're still giving an answer. It's like you can say, language does not exist, and you can use words to say that in English. So it is a statement, but it's an incorrect one.
Well, it would be true that it is false, right? It's certainly false that that thing is true, but it would be true that it is false. So God still encompasses
but it's
that it is false.
but
So
to
it
say
is
something
false.
to say something is false is to provide a negation. You're saying that it's not this, right? So if something is this, the opposite would be that it's not this.
The premise exists, right? Do we know the verse of God says, if you cut down the tree, if you leave it in place, is in accordance to God's will. Okay, so you have two options: cut down the tree and do not cut down the tree. Well, this is not a falsehood and not falsehood. I know I'm not. This is probably not an equation. I'm just saying there's options for things, right? The existence of options is provided by God. God has provided the option for the tree to be cut down or to be left on its place. So a statement can also, a reality can also be that, is that something can be true or can be stated that is, otherwise. But God has provided the premise for that situation to be. So both falls under that umbrella.
Peace. I like to respond to what Peter is saying with the discussion by asking a question that we all know the answer to, but I like to ask it. If someone says God does not exist, God does not exist, well, we know that is false. We know it is false because God does exist. But because human beings have free will, you see what accompanies free will is that basic choice, that the permutations of it, are relatively speaking uncountable in terms of human decision and thought. The statement that God does not exist is false. In effect, it's saying that reality doesn't exist. It's saying that truth does not exist when you say God is the truth, God is reality. And God knows best. That's in part, as I see it, why it's the only unforgivable, why one of the reasons why it is maintained into death. It's the unforgivable sin. It is unforgivable because God exists. God is eternal. There's no beginning, no end. Reality. So is reality. That statement, small statement, is the statement it's false. It's be the illusion of truth because of the context in because of the very in reality,
they're on it, like a
reality with a small or a part of the
that reality is stronger for all those
mind, so to speak, birth out their illusions, realities.
Douglas,
Thank you, Pete.
this benefits the people. This is the appreciation of God's authority. So just to kind of piggyback on Douglas's point.
I know we talked about it in previous studies, but to me, this is kind of the answer to the question when it says in the Quran on the Day of Judgment that the people were committing idol worship. They were really worshiping nothing. You say, well, that's weird, right? Like people worship Jesus. Jesus is the thing. They worship various idols that temporally existed. What does that mean? And my takeaway from it is that they were based upon a falsehood, and as we just kind of discussed, like falsehood vanishes. There isn't anything really there when you dig into it. It's just it's a conceptual idea that outside of the mind doesn't actually exist. So I have a kind of related question to this. Let's say, okay, someone, they believe in God, right? The majority of people on earth, they make this claim that they believe in God, yet they have wrong understandings of God. So let's say, someone believes that God is not all powerful, right? That would negate the very act of the belief because they're attributing something that's ungodly to God, right? So it's like it seems like to me the most profound thing of the Quran is that it's giving us a direct testament to the attributes of God, right? So someone can't, deny these attributes, because if they deny the attributes, then what they're worshiping, even though they might call it God, isn't God. What do you guys think of that?
Well, this is further elaborated by God when He says, "Do you think that you will be able to say we believe without being put to the test?" And the test is affirming God's attributes. To accept God's authority, like Satan does that, but to believe in it, to truly hold yourself accountable to the fact that all things are willed by God, that God is the omnipotent one, that there is no Lord but God. That is believing in God. You are following through with your actions and your words. To do the opposite, you are actually in protest, right? If you were to ask Satan, is God the authority of the heavens and earth? He would say yes. However, his defiance points out his disbelief in God's authority.
So I have a question about that. So what if you're somebody who believes in God, the last day, and does righteous works, but is not exposed to scripture? Like, you guys think that they have like more or less the right set of attributes of God?
Well, Abraham is exactly that, right? He asked for his rights. He saw the authority of God being true and asked for his rights of his religion, right? Which sets the precedent, right? He had no precedent before him that he could reference, right? He didn't have a scripture that came before him. He recognized God's authority through just deduction and through divine inspiration, right? That is the example, right? So scripture is a help. However, you can come to the conclusion that God is the sole authority without it, if God wills, right?
Right. Sole authority is one thing, but like he has many attributes, right?
Yeah, like the whole redemption arc, right? And that's kind of encompassed with the saying, right? Believe in God, believe in the last day. So you believe that God is the sole authority. You believe that you will be held accountable on the day of judgment. After this life is done, you will be held accountable to the actions you have done. And as a result, you live righteously, right? Because you know you will be held accountable. You recognize that this world is a redemption arc for the individual, and you take advantage of this grace and mercy that God has bestowed upon us to refine ourselves.
Peace. I think there's an interesting uh, distinction between a person says, I believe in God, and another person says, I know God. I think belief in God it's a very basic concept, because we are already witness to the fact that, from chapter 7, 172, everyone can find it like through scanning his brain and heart. This has to be there, that's for sure. So they actually, even though they say they don't believe it, they have to say that in their innermost they believe in God. So, but who knows God? I think submitters should know God. We should know God, not only believe. As like you all mentioned very, very nicely, the attributes. So when Adam and Eve was made a mistake, the first attribute we see is God is the Redeemer. God redeemed them, for example. He redeems. Knowing this gives a lot of comfort to the human being because their parents, Adam and Eve, was saved with this attribute of God. They knew God. Peace.
Peace. And that's the grace and mercy of Scripture, right? It changes our inherent perspective of, like I think humanity, our natural tendency and why we're here to begin with, is we tend to shift the blame to something else. We really do have this victim mentality of being, the detriments of our own character we're victims of, and we see this with Satan's initial stance, like, well, you made me this way. Since you willed that I go astray, right? Like, it's almost a defiance. Well, why are you pointing out my flaws when you made me this way? Well, we wanted the freedom of will. It's inherent within our creation. So shifting the blame from external sources and holding ourselves accountable, as God points out, all good things come from God and anything bad comes from us. That is due to our inherent objection to God's authority. The Quran and other scriptures that preceded us and this community are a means and way and a tool to shift that perspective from blaming others and changing our reality, as Douglas had pointed out, taking away the lies that take away our accountability, and objectively see that we are our own detriment. The only obstacle to our benefit, to our redemption, is ourselves and our lack of trust in God's authority. So shifting that scenario, that's what the Scripture is there for, to shift our perspective to the objective reality of God's authority. And once we accept that, that's when we can hold ourselves accountable, right? That's when we can truly see the flaws that have brought our own detriment, our own destruction, and by God's leave, seek redemption, seek repentance, and reform by God's leave, right? It's to humble ourselves, to not self-exalt ourselves to something that think we deserve better based off of our own inhibitions, and to realize that God has given us everything specifically for the betterment of us. And we can either take advantage of that, or we can protest and say, well, if it was me, I would do better. Or if I was in control of the situation, it would be better. Because that's what a victim is saying. A victim is saying, well, if I was in control, it would be different, right? The difference would be our own destruction. We just don't see it. And ironically, God gives us individually exactly what we want. And often it is to our own detriment, right? What we want and what we desire is often something that destroys us. But God knows best. God knows how this story plays out, and that's why He gives us exactly what we need. And we can either be appreciative or unappreciative of this.
Peace. Salam alaikum.
Peace be upon you.
So, yeah, mashallah, when we say God is running everything, God is in full control, that's based on in light of the whole Quran. And in Quran, God is teaching us that God has systems, and there are multiple systems that work hand in hand. One is cause and effect. So the God is in full control of all these systems, and then there's sometimes miracles and exceptions. So we need to, by God's will, I read Quran throughout our life, cover to cover, in the light of the whole Quran, understand systems, and then take advantage of that. So God is in full control. There is cause and effect. If something happens, we reflect and we keep on improving. And whenever we turn to God, God turns the situation positive. So it may be blessing disguised, it may be a lesson, it may be a consequence of something we have done. The key is that, inshallah, it's a journey, and we all keep on improving. We don't get OCD, we don't get stuck. We always turn to God and try to see the lesson, wisdom behind it, based on the systems that God described.
Yeah, beautiful example. What you just said kind of reminds me of the allegory God gives. When it comes down to the metal and the water, the foam rises to the top and becomes useless. The irony is it through the turbulence, itself exalts itself above everything else. However, that which stays humble and down to the ground, that which realizes it's in under the control of God, that is what sticks. That's the redemption. That's the refinement process. But through the turbulence, our impurities are exposed. Now, either A, we can see this exposition as a great blessing of God, guiding us to seek repentance and guidance forward, past those insecurities, past those impurities of our lives, our inadequacies. Or we become the foam and we hold on to it because that foam is the lie we tell ourselves, that we are better than who we truly are. Well, we're self-exalting, but if you scrape that away, it's nothing. It's that foam, that useless foam.
So the betterness is in righteousness, and God defines who is better. God says the best is the most righteous, and we are in the path of righteousness. Is a lifelong journey. The key is that when we turn to God, God helps us, comes to rescue, and we keep on improving and never stuck in a negative state of mind. Inshallah, try to reflect and improve.
Yeah, the perfect example of this is Abraham, right? He was exalted by God, but not by himself. Abraham did not exalt himself. In fact, a beautiful point of his absolute submission is the fact that, like, he even said, "Who God calls him a dear friend in the Quran," right? But he references God and says, "The one who will God willing forgive me and redeem me." This humility is the reason why he was exalted, not due to his own self-exaltation. He recognized God's authority and submitted to it. And then, as God points out, he exalts whomever he wills, right? The one who self-exalts becomes the lowest, ironically. The one that is scraped off the top like the foam.
Peace. Tagging on to what Brother Justin said a moment ago. In Surah 2, verse 2, 2 and 3, God says, the scripture is infallible, a beacon for the righteous who believe in the unseen. Who believe in the unseen. We recall that Moses asked to see God, and we know what occurred when when God manifested what he willed to the mountain or what have you. What we know what occurred. In the example of Abraham, Abraham surveyed the heavens and earth, the stars, the moon, the planets. He looked at everything around him, and by a process of deduction, he concluded that his Lord and Master was the creator of everything that was visible, everything that he could discern in terms of from a physical existence. God guided him to the conclusion that his Lord and Master and Creator is the Lord and Master and Creator of all things. With that said, we are taught in the Quran, we are guided and we are deprogrammed. We snap out of a form of programming where, for example, people are taught by their parents in society. Some people say, well, do you believe in God? Yes, I believe in God. That's a parroted type of response. It's a reflex response. The mere statement, I believe in God or God, does not mean that the person truly knows and understands God through his attributes, or they truly do not have the correct knowledge and understanding of God. So I'll let rest my comments with that. Thank you.
If no one else has any other comments or questions, we can also open it up to just any Quranic topic or verse. So I don't know if anyone's on their own personal reading, anything they want to share or questions they want to bring up. We can open the discussion to those topics as well.
Just to continue on to the conversation, and kind of just further, because I do believe this is a very important topic for the individual, for myself included. It's important to recognize that Satan's sole purpose is for us to be unappreciative of God's authority, right? His promise, when condemned out of heaven, was to skulk on our path, and for God to find that most of us are unappreciative, right? This unappreciation is a lack of trust, a lack of happiness with God's authority, and to believe in a lie that we sell ourselves, right? Whether we're better, whether the world is corrupt, all this fun stuff, that how things are unjust, right? This is the common lie we tell ourselves. And the reason why is because we are no longer, if we believe in that lie, we realize that we come to the conclusion that we are not a factor of how society is degrading or how our community is degrading. God gives the alternative as saying, look, we are all implicitly part of the destruction or the redemption. And how we act is a small piece of that. So we can either look at the world around us and appreciate what God has given us, or B, we can turn around and be unappreciative and protest against everything. And you see this, right? Like politics, religion, culture. There's this inherent thing of complaining of what is going on and how things should be different, but nothing changes. It's commonplace. If you aren't a actor, like if you don't act on being part of the solution, you are part of the problem inherently, right? Complaining without a solution is just that, complaining, right? But if we recognize that the faults and failings of our community are also inherent within ourselves, the best way to act forward is to recognize those faults and failings within ourselves and adjust by God's leave.
Peace. I have a question, or perhaps in a statement. I often find myself, not often, sometimes I find myself. I read this verse many times ago, many times and a while back, and I found myself to be sometimes in the similar situation that Joseph's father was in. Jacob. He said, this is Surah 12, verse 8. He said, I simply complained to God about my dilemma and grief. For I know from God what you do not know. I don't know about the second part, but the first part I do happen to me. And it's like I run to some sort of a dilemma. Something that, I can't put two things together, and I complain to God about it. I don't know if this is righteous to do that, but I feel like if he did it, and God talks about it in the Quran, that gives me also right to do it. Sometimes that, I say, something's not adding up in my life, or something is not quite doing what I was hoping or is happening. And like, I'm just basically complaining to God, says, why is this happening? Why is this way? And trying to get an answer out of it. And it seems to be carrying it sometimes with me. So I don't know if anybody feels the same or have any understanding or experience from this verse that can elaborate that, that can happen to us. We sometimes get perplexed as well, and how we can get some sort of closure and understanding. Do we need to be more patient? Things like that.
Yeah, peace. Like I can talk about my own self. Like this is a common thing I see all the time, right? Like we have an inherent desire to seek power outside of God's authority, right? So this can be a boss, a job, anything like that. And to say we believe in God's authority is very easy, as we've mentioned prior. But like to truly carry that out on a day-to-day basis is very difficult. Like I work outside, if it's raining, I can have an inherent feeling where like, oh man, it's raining. But like, okay, well, do you not trust in God's authority? What would it be like if it never rained? Right? What would it be like? Would you truly be happier? Right? You know, I'm working really hard. I feel like I'm validated and getting a promotion. But I don't get a promotion. Would I truly be happier? Would it truly benefit me to get a promotion? Am I seeking power or am I seeking happiness outside of God's authority? Whatever God's giving me right now is enough. And I should be content with that. And it's that constant wrestling. It's that constant realizing that like I'm objecting to God's authority continuously. And we are put to the test, as God says, with money, children, and our spouses, and whatever it may be. Right? It's easy to say we believe in God's authority. But we are constantly tried through various scenarios to see if that is accurate, right? To submit a total submission means you never object. You constantly act without asking. A loyal soldier, right? And that is, from my perspective, and I would love some clarification if somebody else has a different idea about this, but that is what a total submission is just you go through the motions and you just accept it and appreciate it for what it is. You recognize that this scenario may be not seen from your perspective as the best, but it is the best. And you just trust in that. Right?
Yeah, I think this what's happening to in this story of Joseph. I think what is transpiring is profound in terms of the amount of the situation is complex. The situation is not easy. The situation seems to be out of control for him, and he's dealing with this situation, and it's not ending in 1 day or 2 days, and it's carrying on, right? So he's put in a test situation. He's put in a difficult situation, and it's not ending. And I think this is part of the dilemma that he's dealing with. He's complaining to God about it. Why God? What is happening to Joseph? Why my other 12 sons are behaving this way or whatnot? Why is this happening? And he's going into a quiet, patient, situation, but he's grieving as well. So this is not an easy scenario for him. And I think this transpires, at least from my life, that we get into situations and then I get reminded of that what Message of Covenant said in one of the audios. I didn't do it too bad. I wasn't too bad. I wasn't too bad of a servant. Why am I put in this situation? What kind of lesson I'm going to learn? Why I'm not getting the lesson? Why am I confused with this? So it seems that we are put in situations, at least for me, I can speak, that I don't have a straight answer for. I don't have a straightforward, A equals B, this is the situation. And I'm puzzled, but yet it seems the lesson I get from the Quran, this is okay to be puzzled. This is okay to be perplexed. This is okay to run to a dilemma. You just have to be steadfast, be persevering, and the answer will come out. You don't lose hope. Don't think that, God is abandoning you or, is punishing you or maybe he is, but nonetheless, do not think that do not despair in any form or shape or get into a angry or whatever situation that you may get out of. You can't control your emotions. You can't control the way your surrounding is happening. So just be patient and steadfastly persevere and continue to ask God for help, and the help will come out. It will not come on your terms and your time expectation. It will come when it needs to come, and this is what I experienced. And I think this verse, it's for me, it's a it's a soothing verse because when I read it, I say, you know what? If he's gone through that, I can go through a lot more, much easier. So God always gives a lot of extreme examples in the Quran for us to reflect on and think, you know what? He was a messenger of God and he went through this. So what you think that you shouldn't go through any sort of hardship, ups and down to test the character that you have. to test our resolve and faith.
Yeah, 2 points on this, right? Like God points out without pain, there is no gain without pain, right? And repeats it, right? And then going back to Joseph, there's only one time in the Quran where he questions God's authority, and that's in 1242, where he seeks the help of somebody else other than God, and consequently he stays in prison a little bit longer, right? It was at that point where, like, you know, obviously Joseph didn't have, I would say, the easiest path forward, right? As we look at it, but without a doubt, he gained the most due to the difficulties he faced, because at that point in time he had to realize humility, and once he recognized humility and that God's in control of everything, that's when he became essentially, you know, more powerful than the king for all intents and purposes, right? So, like, though we may not understand why we go through difficulties throughout life, they are for benefit of us if we have and gain the right perspective of trusting in God's authority. But if we don't, we further delve ourselves to our own destruction, right? Joseph only stayed in prison because of his lack of trust in God's authority, right? That was due to his own detriment, right? His own destruction. But if we trust in God and just trust the process and recognize that this is a refinement process, then God will guide us, you know, to a benefit, to redemption, and that's the goal.
And one last thing, do you guys think that this is okay to complain to God?
I I mean, listen, I've talked out loud to God, right, and told him, like, this sucks. Why does it have to be like this? Blah blah blah. You know, talking out loud to God. But by the end of it, I would repent and say, sorry, God. Actually, I shouldn't be asking. You know, I trust you. You're the provider, etc., etc. You're the protector and whatnot. So it's natural. It's normal. And if you're going to talk to anybody in a way that, you know, is complaining, at least it's, I guess, to God. And your intention is not necessarily to object. You're just talking out loud. You know what I mean? I can't say that's inherently wrong. Now, if you start talking to God like Satan does, then you have a problem, right? Because even the angels, they would ask God, why are you going to put someone on here? They didn't. They were truly perplexed. They didn't understand why God was doing what he was doing. And they asked him, right? And God didn't say, hey, guess what, guys? You go down as well now. He said, listen, I know what you do not know. And the angels went back to trusting God. It's different if you're asking, if you're saying these things to question God's authority versus to, I guess, you know, understand things, well, your curiosity, so to speak. Like these are things. You know what I mean? The intention and purpose and conclusion behind all of them are vastly different. So I personally, in your shoes, wouldn't feel bad, right? But only you know why you're doing what you're doing.
Peace. God knows best. I think that fundamentally, all of us, from time to time, to one degree or another, we you know, God tells us in the Quran that we are forgetful. We are forgetful, and one of the things God knows best, I believe, that we forget is we forget that we are spiritual beings in a physical body, in a space-time universe. And being in this life and in this world and going through the conditions and circumstances that we go through, we predictably become, so to speak, overwhelmed. we feel helpless, or we may feel not cornered, but we feel, what can we do? And it's in those moments that they are tests. It's like God guides or inspires and causes or reminds us that he is the one in control. He's the one who created us. He's the one who assigned us to our bodies and placed us in this life. And so I think God, like Brother Ilham was saying, trust in God, remember God. God is fully aware of every condition that every human being is in at any time. And that's to remind us, so to speak, of where we came from, why we are here, and where we are going. Peace. Thank you.
Yeah, a good point too is often these difficulties are what make us implore the most. As God points out in the Quran, there are those who implore when they're faced with adversity. However, when they're taken out of adversity, they forget God, right? So we're constantly put through these tests of, difficulty, hardship, as well as blessing, right? This is echoed with Solomon, right, where he says that God there to testify to see if I'm appreciative or not appreciative, right? So appreciation has to go both ways. We have to be extremely thankful to God, not only when we're facing difficult adversities, but when we're blessed with things as well, to attribute them to God, not to ourselves. But that's the human condition as well. We become overjoyed when difficulty we're no longer faced with adversity, right? The human tendency is to think that we were power of that situation, which once again is just as bad. So these moments of humility, these moments of difficulty that make us come to God, like that's a good thing. It makes us realize that we are powerless in that scenario. The difficulty, however, is, okay, well, when that adversity is lifted, who's the source of that alleviation, right? Do we attribute it to God or do we attribute it to ourselves? And the unfortunate reality is humanity often praises itself, right? Praises its ego or some other external source.
So I wanted to say earlier, I agree with Brother Justin's concept that the goal is to strive to be obedient soldiers, right? When a circumstance has happened upon us, or we're told, go to the front lines and storm the beach, right? We don't say, oh, but the machine guns, or whatever. It's just you accept it for what it is, and you go in trusting the command that you're given without hesitation. Now, listen, this is not negating the fact that we have room to grow and we gotta, work our way to get there and things like that. But I just wanted to echo that should be the standard which we work towards and strive, and genuinely believe that yes, we can get to that, God willing.
This kind of reminds me of, I think it's 2:14, where it says that the messengers and those who believe, they're shooken up to the point where they say, where's God's victory? That this is where the growth occurs, is when you you get to the point where you're at a boiling point, that's, where you need to focus on to increase in faith, to increase in submission. You think about it, when you're young in submission, maybe more minor stuff will unsettle you, and you get more years of experience and more confidence in God. That threshold is going to perpetually be increased, where you can just handle more. And I see that as just part of the growth process. But yeah, it's not that, hey, this is a fair pass for us to perpetually complain to God. But when we hit our
Yes, Don.
limits, yeah.
You do.
Is my audio cutting out?
No, go ahead. Finish
Okay.
your.
Yeah, yeah. Just that, when we hit our limits, that when we start complaining, that's kind of our threshold. So God willing, the next challenge or obstacle we aim to overcome, we just are able to submit for a longer duration.
And that's God's system. Like we see that everywhere, right? No matter what you do, how you test the threshold and become better in any aspect is to exceed or to hit that point where you cannot do anymore. If you want to lift 100 pounds over your head, you don't start off with 100 pounds because you can't do it. You start off with, I don't know, 20. Let's say 20. Well, that's your limit. But over time, touching that threshold of where you can go, that's how you get better to the point of the goal. And God gives us those repetitions, right? Like if you fail at a test, it will come again by God's leave. But you may be more well equipped if you are more accepting of God's authority, right? Whereas those who don't, right, they try to blame everything else, right? And that's kind of like the biases, right? Where the individual can accept what's happening as a mercy and a gift of God to redeem us, right? This pain with gain, or it further substantiates that everything's unfair and you start cursing God and everything around you, right? This is a test, right? Like the reason why we're here is because we question God's authority. Okay, so, it's easy to say you believe. What about now? What about now? What about now? And the tests increase based off of the soldier, right? But the hardest battles are given to the hardest soldiers, right? We're given precedents of various prophets. They didn't have an easy go, right? They went through extreme adversities that none of us have seen. And yet, by God's leave, just trusting in God got an amazing outcome by God's leave. So as Peter pointed out, this is God's system. It's how we grow. It is the moment of growth. And it's something to appreciate as well, to be grateful for. Because without being put to the limit, how can we truly see how we would react in that scenario? We bear witness as to what happens in that scenario, and then we can either repent or reform or lament and be despondent.
I can just think of personal events in my life where something should just happen very smoothly. There's all this turbulence, and the question is like, okay, well, why? And you realize like, okay, God has coordinated this how do you put it, lesson in that you're gonna have these ups and downs, but it's for your good, right? It's a training. Don't worry, it's gonna work out at the end, but you have to be able to handle the ups and downs. And if you can handle it, then yeah, the other aspects in your life are going to come that much easier. There's a quote I totally like overused, but it's a easy choices, hard life, hard choices, easy life. It's just like, okay, we have to be willing to endure the tough choices and be steadfast and appreciative and happy during it, and then it's going to guarantee, God willing, a good, happy, easy life.
Peace, everyone.
MashaAllah, thank you.
Sorry, can I
Peace
make
be
a
upon you.
short comment? Inshallah. Justin, are you gonna speak?
No, I just said peace back to you, brother.
Okay, I just have a short comment about generally. Let's say in 3 different situations, maybe 2. I'm not sure. First one, when you get through something like losing someone or fail at a test for me as a student, for example, or something going wrong in your workplace. Doesn't matter, whatever it is. And secondly, when you ask for something and it did not happen in the exact time as the way you exactly wanted, it didn't happen. Or a third way, I mean, in a third situation, you basically just don't understand something, a topic, a subject in submission. It can be something big, it can be something small, like let's say 40H, the 40H topic, or something smaller, doesn't matter. In all this situation, the point, of course, we all can give lots of examples and say this is the point, but above all of them, the main point, of course, is staying in submission. I'm not talking about specifically submit to God about that topic. I mean, understand that topic, or if you get through something, not complaining, yes, that's another part. But I say staying in submission. Don't leave the religion. And for that, because maybe you think, oh, why will I? I will not. But, it happens to people. People leave the religion because of only one thing, that it may look very small for you. It's not valuable, but for some people, which can happen to us too, if we will not be careful. You can leave. You maybe you think like you will not today, but tomorrow you don't know what's going to happen. So I have I don't know. I think we can say recommendation or just advice for we want to for example, I want to make my father and mother proud, right? I study right now. I mean, I'm getting ready for university, inshallah. And we all did similar things to make our parents and or our friends, or I don't know, maybe your wife, maybe your husband, I don't know, proud. We want to make people proud that is close, that are close to us. And why did I say that is, inshallah, I will read two sentences, just quote by quote from the messenger. He says in 9082, he says, God wants to be proud of you and wants to show you off to the angels and say, look at my servant. He worships me no matter what happens without ever seeing me. So I just want to advise you to write this to maybe your door, maybe your wallpaper at your phone, maybe you're at your computer. I don't know. Just I believe it's the best motivation we can ever find, because we live this life once. Actually, we live every day, but we die once. So we have one life. Maybe if we are lucky, maybe 100 years, maybe 80, maybe 50, maybe 24, 45. Doesn't matter. So we have one chance, less chance. So I think it's the best motivation to say, think whatever happens, whatever you feel in bad way, just say God wants to be proud of me. So I have to just stay in the straight path. That's all. Thank you.
Well, that is a profound concept of worshiping God, uh, even when we don't, physically see Him. We only see His signs in this world.
Anybody have any other topics or observations of the Quran that they went through that just to add to the conversation? Beautiful when we can talk about the Quran and its verses and its understanding as a community.
I have a couple stuff. I just need to get situated though. It was some of the articles from this week, but just give me a few minutes if one else can
You're
bring
doing
up any
announcements?
other topic. Yeah, I mean, you got anything you wanted to announce?
Yeah, we're preparing a video on Salat. As we know, a lot of also this is not limited to Sunni English speaking people, but also Shia and other sects. They question, if Quran is the only source of law or source of religious guidance, then where is the 17 rak'ah in the Quran? This is their typical statement. So we're creating a video, God willing, soon about this topic. We know that there are some existing 19 code related subjects about the number of rak'ahs, and we have, by God's grace, put together them, as well as we started to put together some 19 related code about the number of Allahu Akbar in the Quran, in the Salat, as well as the formation. There were existing codes as well as we, by God's grace, we have found a couple of interesting ones that we would, God willing, create a video on. But before that, we do have the text in Farsi, but we can also share that in English with anyone who is interested, or if you want to put it on any of the English articles that you guys put together, we can share that with you. You can go through them, see what it looks like. Does it make sense? Does it make sense? It doesn't, whatever. And then you can pick and choose what you think is suitable for an article on that subject of Salat. And this is not only about the rak'ah, this is about the formation, as well as about even the things that have been uttered, Allahu Akbar and other stuff in the Quran, in the Salat, in all of the Salats, daily Salats. So we've done some research on that, and God willing, and our objective is to confirm, or originally to confirm, the existing Salat, and I think we have some interesting stuff to share.
Praise God. Yeah. Once it's ready, definitely share it with the group.
What I can do is I usually have it in the Google Doc form. What I will do a translation in English, and then I put it on a doc, and then you guys can look at it. If you like, you can share it, and if you have a question or anything, you can put a comment on it, and then we can go from there. Or you can pick it up and turn it into an article.
It's interesting. There's it's kind of related to one of the articles I was going to discuss. But first off, it's Salat, Zakat. These are the most defined terms in the entire Quran, right? Because the argument is, how many people memorize the Quran? You're talking about a small subset. Maybe they memorized a portion, but the entire Quran, small subset of submitters memorized it. But you ask me, how many submitters perform the Salat? Every single submitter since the time of the Prophet, even the ones who are pseudo, right? They perform the Salat. It's just the most mass practiced ritual in the history of the world, and that makes it the most defined term in the entire Quran. So the mistaken argument that people make is they say, well, look, we have a hadith that confirms the number of units. The irony is they're cherry picking data, because there's hadith that contradicts that. right? Where it's like there's different units associated to the prayer counts, first off. They're only looking at the ones that confirm what the consensus understands it as. But then secondly, this is a false justification, right? Like in the example is, I have a broken clock, okay? Twice a day, it's going to be telling you the right time, just by sheer coincidence. Does that make my clock, justified in telling the time the rest of the day? It's like, no, it doesn't. And this is the way that they're trying to do. They say, look, we have arguments for why these one-off hadith correspond with something that we already know to be true, as if that's justification for the entire corpus. And it's really not. That's like, again, trying to justify a broken clock because it's right twice a day.
It also
The
seems like
time is now. The time is now, as it always has been.
yeah, praise God. It's also important to point out that these are the things, like zakat and salah are the two things that are constantly under attack and in dispute between communities, right? As Peter pointed out, these are the things that form the community, and like, it is the thing that is undisputed between submitters from time immemorial. But they are also the points of dispute. Like we had somebody come on saying that zakat is already done through federal taxes, right? Like it is Satan's goal to dismantle or to fabricate things about the salah or zakat, and those are the first line of attack. By the way, speaking about your articles, Peter, I actually based my last khutbah off of the one with Dr. Egner, the neuroscientist atheist. I thought that was a good read. Praise God.
Are you guys vegetarians?
It's not like, it's not a food prohibition. I'm sure there are people who by choice are vegetarian, but it's not a religious dictate.
Okay. Do you drink alcohol?
No, intoxicants are forbidden in the Quran.
Okay. What about lust? Is that considered an intoxicant?
Lust is is definitely not good. That's for sure.
So
what about
lust
anger?
it isn't either. So it says that the believers are suppressors of anger.
But you wouldn't consider it an intoxicant.
So in the Quran, the term sukr is actually used towards lust in the context of the people of Lot, right? That they were intoxicated by their lust. So in a certain context, yeah, I mean, it's something that basically makes you lose your cognitive abilities to discern between, good moral conduct and bad. That's something that we should refrain from, right? Because the state of being intoxicated is actually condemned in the Quran.
Yeah. So khamara means ferment. Wait, hold up. I'll be back.
I feel like the guy, he comes on and off the server, but I think he always forgets what our stance is, because it's always like we got to start always from the ground floor again. Yeah, it was funny. I was gonna do a sermon regarding that guy, the neuroscientist, and then I just made it into a sermon about fatherhood, because he has this opening in the his book where he says that he was an atheist until he had a son, and he thought that his son had a mental deficiency, and so he starts supplicating to God, and then he gets this like eye-opening moment where he's like, wow, Okay, I get it now.
Praise God. And it's so relevant to the conversation we were just having, right? Like, it's often in the times of difficulty that everybody's willing to supplicate to God, right? Once those adversities have kind of passed away, everybody forgets. I really like Solomon's point where he says, like God, like he sees a blessing, like with the ant, right? He hears the ant talk. He's like, wow, God, God's testing me to see if I'm appreciative. And what a beautiful response and a good precedent.
Yeah, it's not to get habituated, right? We have all these blessings. Like the fact that we can talk, we can walk, we can speak. All these things that we just become accustomed to. We just assume that that's the natural state until we lose it, right? The second we lose it, we realize, oh man, I was so blessed. Why didn't I take it? Be more appreciative when I had it.
Yeah, man. Sorry for the interruption.
No worries.
Yeah, like
You were
like I
bringing up
was.
Aaron. Yeah.
Huh? Sorry,
Yeah,
what was that?
you're bringing up Samar before you dropped.
Yeah, khamar. So khamar means fermentation. That's it comes from the khamar. Okay, and that's like the root word and its morphology indicates fermentation of fruits. Okay, so you can't call it intoxication, but sukr is intoxication.
Samar, if I'm not mistaken, if you look at like 2459, it's simply a cover in the context of intoxication. Yeah, you can say, okay, it's wine, fermentation, but a broader understanding of it is something that again covers the mind. So
Well,
that's within the realm of the
well,
meaning.
let me draw your attention to a very interesting passage. Okay, it says chance, altars, and a khamar are the filthy handiwork, and divination are the filthy handiwork of the devil. Okay,
Correct. That's 590 and 91. Yeah.
exactly. So, but when you take a closer look, you cannot understand this as a material delegation that God has delegated probability and superstition and the biological process of fermented grapes to the realm of the devil. This wouldn't make sense. It goes against, then you would elevate Satan as a a co-god, or a delegate of
No,
God,
I think
right?
that would
So,
be no. I would see that as a kind of a fallacy to say that, hey, because someone is misusing one of the provisions of God, therefore that makes them as a co-god.
no, the language is clear that it is the filthy handiwork of the devil. So the question is, the biological process of fermentation, is this the filthy handiwork of the devil or something else more subtle that we need to shift our perspective and analyze?
Yeah. Well, if you look at 591, right, it gives you the reasoning behind it. So 591, if someone can pull it up, it's basically that it's what it leads to, right? Because in the Quran, it says in Surah 16, I can't remember the exact verse, that basically from grapes and dates that you can make khamar, right? Or you can make a delicious drink. Meaning that it's like, look, God created us for one, but you have the free will to use it against the concept of what God created it for. And this is similar to Surah 4, verse 119, where it says, I will distort the creation of God. This is what the devil claims, meaning that, God creates fire, right? The purpose of fire can be beneficial, or someone can choose to use it for destructive purposes. That's the handiwork of the devil.
Okay, I'll be back. I'm sorry, I got another interruption, but I really like this where this is going. I'll be back.
Sounds good. Anyone else want to share any updates or thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to say the biological process of fermentation is created by God, right? God created this universe and all its processes. Satan didn't have a hand in creating anything, otherwise Satan would also be a creator. But the thing is, we can't create anything. And what's funny is that inside of our digestive system, like in our gut, fermentation actually happens, right? Like sugars do get converted into alcohol, but the thing is that your liver is able to break down that. It has an enzyme for that, and there's actually a condition where if you are lacking that enzyme, or for whatever reason there's an issue in making that enzyme and the protein's denatured, you're not able to process alcohol even from your own body, like when your own body makes it, and you end up getting drunk off of food. Like it's a serious condition, but yeah.
That's wild. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that you don't stop to reflect and be like, wow, I should be appreciative for how we can digest food. And imagine if that was just a natural state. Yeah, you consume food, you become intoxicated. Like how unproductive society would be.
Yeah. Basically, nobody will be driving after lunch. You have
I don't
to.
think we would never get to the point of developing cars. I mean,
No.
we just
Yeah. I think you'd have to basically just everyone would have to intermittently fast. That would just be a human norm, like right comic cards. All right, I'll get drunk when I get home. No problem. I read this chapter 2, verse 8, I believe, at the masjid, right? Let me see. No, not 2:8. 2:18. No, not 18. 2:20. And it was regarding the hypocrites, and I just found it interesting. Because usually we think like when you like choose to disbelieve or whatever, like God seals your mind and your eyes and stuff like that. But what I learned what I noticed in 2:20 was it says that the lightning almost snatches away their eyesight. When it lights for them, they move forward, and when it turns dark, they stand still. If God wills, He can take away their hearing and their eyesight. And from what I understand, this is what God does to disbelievers, because in 2:6 it says, in 2:7 it says, God seals their minds and their hearing and their eyesight is veiled. They have incurred severe retribution. So these guys, they've been blocked, but hypocrites are not blocked. Like their eyesight and hearing they're not deafened, they're not veiled. They're permitted to see the light when it is shown to them.
Hello.
Oh,
I can hear
he's
you.
back. Yeah, welcome back.
Yeah, thank you guys for being patient with me and the interruptions. I don't control the interruptions, but I have to deal with them when they come up.
No problem.
Yeah, bro. So, here's the interesting motifs throughout the Quran, right? Especially when you try to parse out the English and the Arabic, right? So there's a lot of agricultural analogies and words and descriptions used, like even the word kafir or kafara, right? If you look at the Arabic morphology, it's related to when a farmer digs a hole to sow seeds and to cover that soil, right? So and it's always talking about fruits, and there's many things athamarat, when it's talking about the fruits that God rewards and brings forth for the believers, in contrast to the disbelievers who have no fruits. They're fruitless in their endeavors. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that if you think that the mere act of fermenting a grape is an affront to God, No, this is a major misunderstanding, because it's deeper. It's what is being fermented in you. Okay, so more to do than what's being fermented in a vessel, right? And your stomach is kind of like a vessel, so you can like drink some fruits that are fermented, and then it sits in your tummy, and then you can get intoxicated. But it's also like what are you consuming, right? If you're consuming the 7 vices or the 9 vices, depending on which tradition you adhere to, right? And that stuff, it sits in you for a very long time. It ferments. It has to bubble to the surface somehow, right?
This is actually the passage that gets misunderstood in the Bible from my understanding regarding Jesus making the parable. It says, "Not what defiles you, what goes in the mouth, it's what comes out of it," right? And the false understanding from this is that to say, "Oh, look, Jesus is making all food permissible," but he's making this comparison between deeds, right? It's that you get held accountable, when basically they become manifest, because we can't necessarily control the inputs that are coming into us, right? If you have society, you have culture, you have pop music, whatever, they're going to be bombarding you with messages. But the question is, okay, once you receive that, what do you do with it?
Have you seen some YouTube videos called Sunnah recipes?
No, I have not.
Okay, it's actually very funny, and I laugh at them. So there's these like literalists in the mainstream Muslim community that like are making like YouTube videos trying to get closer to the Sunnah, etc., etc. The same old, the same old propaganda. So there's this one guy. He does Sunnah recipes. So he's saying the favorite meal of Prophet Muhammad was tharid. Okay, a very specific meal, right? But if you actually read the hadith literature, right, very interesting anomalies happen when tharid is requested, right? So there's this one tradition where they had no food in the house, right? So they were fasting all day. Check this out, right? So they're fasting all day. They come into the house, and the Prophet requests for tharid to be made, right? And the person in the house is like, "By God, I have nothing. We've been fasting all day, and there is nothing." Okay? And he replies and says, "Prepare for the banquet, and we will receive tharid," right? And in the narration, it goes on to say that they ate a heavenly tharid while they were fasting. Very interesting, huh?
Yeah, I mean, but it's like even hearing something like that, it's I just see the Christian kind of allure creeping its way inside the Hadith corpus, where you see a lot of this concept of this heavenly meal, because a lot of the Hadith, I shouldn't say a lot, but there's a portion of the Hadith that they're just using as almost like polemics against the Christian. So they say, "Oh, Jesus brought food. Oh, Muhammad did too. Oh, Jesus brought water. Muhammad did too," right? Where they're saying like, okay, he had this divinely meal, and oh, look, Muhammad had it as well. Yeah, I mean, I don't put too much weight on the the literal take, but I do think it is interesting in the sense of understanding. If you look at it in the framework of the historical, where it's like, okay, why would someone be propagating this hadith? Like, what would be the motivation for it? I always find that to be more telling than the actual hadith itself.
So you guys are materialists.
I don't know if I'd say I'm a materialist. I would say, for me, I try to put a historical lens on the concept of if someone is propagating a hadith, what is the motivation behind it? I think the last time we talked about the one regarding the prophet ate chicken. Like, what would be the motivation behind no context, no backstory, no anything, but hey, you know what? Let's make sure the world knows, and that it's got a reliable chain of transmission that the prophet ate chicken. In isolation, it seems very peculiar. But if you understand in the debates and the arguments that's happening, why someone would want to propagate this hadith, it gives it more color.
Well, you know, it's peculiar because that part of the world, due to the Zoroastrian influence, you know, they considered birds, all types of birds, as like a sacred animal, right? Like, let me show you something very interesting. I mean, if you ever do bird watching, have you ever done bird watching?
Not how do you put it, formally, just in passing, yeah.
Okay. So when I was younger, you know, we would go on camping trips, and then I had an uncle that had like a really powerful camera, and he was able to watch birds, and he took me out a couple of times, and we were watching birds in their natural habitat. They're very, very interesting and peculiar creatures, I swear to God. So yo, check this out. Let me share this video. I don't know if you can see it in the side chat. Let me see. I don't know. Should I put it in the general chat? Can I put it in the side chat or general chat is better?
Both works, okay.
Okay, so it's not letting me.
Yeah. If you could put it in the general, I think that's better, because then it's accessible to without having to be in the VC to see it.
Okay, all right, I'll put it in the general because it's not letting me for some reason. So general chat lounge, right?
Do you see VC1 dash chat?
Yeah.
Can you post it there or not?
And it's not letting me for some reason. I don't know why it's not letting me. Just give me a
Yeah, I have
give me a
only no chat too.
Yeah, just put it in general then. We'll look into it. It had this problem before in the past too.
Okay, it's all good. All right, so I'm putting it right here. Okay, so check this out. So in the video, I'm just gonna set it up for you. Somebody is destroying a nest of a crane, and then you watch the rest.
Where'd you put it? I'm not seeing it. Oh, did you put it in the
Chat
side
lounge.
chat?
No, chat lounge.
Chat lounge. Oh, interesting. So you can post in chat lounge, you just can't post in VC1? That's weird.
Let me see if I can now. I don't know. Maybe it was like a glitch. Yeah, I can now. Okay, cool.
Okay. Either way. Take a look. Oh, this is the Osprey. Okay. I actually just saw one of these last week. It's wild.
Are you watching it?
Yeah, I just watched it. You know, it's wild. I just saw one of these. They're called an Osprey. I saw their nest just this week, and I was blown away. They're huge. They're massive. And the state I was in, it's prohibited. Like you get fined and stuff and arrested if you tamper with them. But
Yeah, man.
they
Did
build
you
on
see?
top of the poles and stuff. The response is wild.
Yeah. Did you see how it had? Did you see how it had a couple of sticks in its mouth, and it just dropped the sticks when it realized its nest wasn't there anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then it started to there was no the 5 stages of grief. There was no 5
Yeah.
stages of grief for this guy. You know what I mean? It was like
Wow. But
it
in
was like a
Arabic,
complete. Huh?
yeah. So in Arabic, the word "thir," which means bird, also means omen.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah, and this goes way back. You go into the pre-Quran. The terms were interrelated. There's a whole what do you call it? A study around how they would use for divination the signs of the birds, avianation. I can't remember what they call it.
yeah, bro. So like this is what I'm trying to tell you. You know, like you see that bird right there. It accepted the fact right away. Like it dropped the sticks in its mouth when it realized like there was no more nest, and then it started like mourning, like my nest, and then right away it started like summoning the gods, you know what I mean? As the video says, it's like, yo, it's in communication with a higher power at this point. You know what I mean? Like it just went into like higher power communication. Like you could tell it by its body posture, right? It's like tapping into something else, you know? Because there's
You know
no
what?
biological purpose to act like that, you know, if we were just strictly evolutionary beings, you know what I mean?
Exactly. This is actually, it's funny. I just wrote an article yesterday about this in the context. So if you're familiar with Plato's Republic,
Yeah.
he writes about the Socrates dialogue. And,
Yeah.
Socrates has this thing, it's like, what is justice? And then people come up with answers like, oh, no, sorry, courage. Courage is standing up against, opposition. And he says, well,
Yeah.
okay, what if someone, and then he gives a counter example, right? Where he's showing someone who's courageous, but they're not standing up against opposition. And then someone else says, oh, no, courage is this. You're standing up for a good cause. Okay. And then you say, okay, well, here's a counter example where it's not a good cause, but we'd call them courageous. And in this dialogue, the paradox is, okay, if you can't define it, how is it possible that you are able to identify if it is courageous or if it isn't courageous? Right? That's the paradox. And
Well,
okay.
for me, this is how I define courage. It's when the individual faces their fear. This is like in spite of your fear, you stand your ground, right?
Yeah. It's not about, I'm not getting to the aspect of what the actual definition is. It's just kind of as a example, right? Because you could say, okay, you could use this for any term, right? Love, justice, freedom, right? But the concept is there's some knowledge that how can you distinguish if something is or isn't? Like, so think about this. I ask you, I say, what is the definition of this? Okay, you give me a definition, then let's say it's 90% there, or even 99% there. Okay. But I can give you a scenario and you can determine, is it that or is it not that? So it seems like there's some other form, right, that you're judging by that you're not able to 100% articulate, but it's there. And the whole concept is, and this is what I'm tying it in with this example of the bird. This shows this is not something that we learn. It's innate in us. We know what justice is. We know what love is. We know what basically mourning is. No one had to teach you what these things are.
Excellent.
And some of these you could say that it's like, okay, what's with the connection I was trying to make is God calls the Quran the dhikr, the reminder. Right? In order for it to be the reminder means you have to innately know something. Otherwise, what am I reminding you if I'm teaching you something only that's new?
Yeah, it's correspondence theory to knowledge, right? So you're corresponding with yourself ultimately, right? To make sense out of shapes, people's things, events, concepts, it's self-recognition, right? If I talk to you about quantum physics and you don't know, you're not like relating it to yourself, your own psyche or whatever, your own material reality, like you'll never be able to identify it, right?
Yeah. I mean, it just goes to show that, like, look, we're all have some innate knowledge about justice, about right and wrong, and the fact that this bird is going through those stages, right, shows that this is not something unique to humans, right? Birds themselves aren't like robotic mechanism. They have, some of these innate understandings. And if you ever listen to Jordan Peterson, he always says like regarding trying to destroy hierarchies, and he points towards lobsters, right? And he says, look, even lobsters have this concept.
Lobster is a sea
this is
bug,
something.
bro.
Yeah.
No,
But
I mean,
if the
lobsters are
if
sea
it's that,
bugs, bro.
but even if it's evolutionary, right? We would say, hey, a lobster is a much more simple life form. If they have this trait, right, then it shows just how deep of the character trait is in
No,
all
no,
life.
no, bro, hold on. But lobsters are insects, right? So if you know anything about insects, they eat their neighbors, right? So I don't know why this guy is trying to learn about, trying to give us some profound, insightful knowledge to the human condition by like examining lobsters. You know what I mean? Like that's a completely different category of genus. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
but if there's a trait that you see even among some simple life form is lobsters, right? That carries on to more advanced life forms. It just goes to show how, what you call it, ingrained that trait is into all life. That's the argument.
Well, yeah, bro. Everything seeks to reproduce itself, right? So everything seeks to not be eaten, right? Not to be consumed, right? So like, but that's not special for Listen, bugs eat one another. Like bugs go to war based on proximity. Like if you ever study how bugs operate, so there's two types of bugs. All right, there's colony insects, all right, and they work together, right? And then there's like solitary insects. They eat each other. They literally eat each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you got some funny ass bugs like grasshoppers who turn into a hive when they become really stressed, right? When there's lots of food, they're green and they ignore each other and they just eat grass. But when the food becomes scarce, they release a whole bunch of serotonin, and they go through like a physiological change, and then they turn into a hive mind. But they start eating each other in the hive, in the swarm.
They become
Start
cannibalistic.
targeting.
You know what? You want to know something tangential to this? In the Quran, God equates certain animals as believers and certain animals like disbelievers, right? And if you look, the connection when he equates the disbelievers, it's monkeys, pigs, and locusts, right? And the connection between those is that they're highly cannibalistic, right? So if you look at, say, locusts, what transforms them from the cicadas to the locusts is, like you mentioned, when their population density gets to be too high and food becomes scarce, they have a physiological change and they become cannibalistic.
Yeah.
Right. And then they swarm. And then same thing with like monkeys. For whatever reason, they basically will turn on one monkey, and typically it's about 5. Will gang up on one. They'll rip it apart and consume it. And pigs basically have no problem eating their own. And these are kind of like the metaphorical, what you see is the disbelievers, because in the day of judgment, it says that there'll be mutual blaming, right? They're constantly at war with each other. Hey, give them double the retribution. No, give them double the retribution.
Yeah, but let me tell you something. This is why I don't agree with the hadith tradition that says you're allowed to eat locusts. To me, that's just absurd. You know what I mean?
Well, did you know the hadith also says you can eat hyena?
Yeah, but like what you said, I drew the connection that like the pig and the monkey and the locust are like associated with kuffar, right? And then you have a hadith tradition that says you can eat locusts, you know? And I was like, no, that don't make sense to me. To be honest with you, I'm just letting you know.
Yeah, I think there's a distinction, like for us, Quran alone, the aspect is what is sinful. Like we can't say that locust inherently is prohibited. You can say, hey, it's not healthy, you shouldn't eat it. It's not good for you. You can make arguments that way, but to say someone is committing a sin by the act, we can't say that.
No, it's not about sin, bro. It's not about sin. If I tell you that the apple of knowledge you shouldn't eat, right? Like, and then you say, well, I can eat it under this circumstance, like under these, like, so for example, you know how Muslims say, oh, unless you're in a dire situation, you're allowed to eat a pig. I don't agree with that.
It's in the Quran. So if you look, there's 4 verses on the dietary prohibitions, and all of them end with that caveat that unless you're forced by circumstances without being malicious or deliberate, that you're permitted. And this is no different that it says like if even if you're forced by circumstances to profess disbelief, that God will forgive you, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, like when you have some like what I'm trying to say is we're not supposed to eat pork. All right, we're not supposed to engage in sexual intercourse outside of marriage, right? We're not supposed to steal. We're not supposed to do all this stuff, right? But if you start putting caveats on what you can eat, and in war you're allowed to do this, and you can take people's property if they are not paying jizya. You're putting a whole. So what's the point? You know, we become like the Jews, where we have a rule for everything and a caveat for everything. So to me,
Okay,
this.
I'll tell you, you know, my paradigm, right? And this is the misconstruing is the fact that people are thinking the Quran is giving every conceivable example. It's like, no, the way that it works from my understanding is like, look, God is giving us the extremes, okay? Or in some cases, the ideal. But he's showing that the religion is practical, meaning that if you can't meet the ideal, you do the best you can, right? I would say the other mentality is like, if you look, the Jewish mentality where they have to uphold the letter of the law, the spirit of the law means nothing, and all they do is they spend their time on how to circumvent the law. Like, that's the wrong approach, right?
Yeah,
It's saying that,
I mean,
hey,
bro, trust me,
just
we've
really
done
quick,
that. Like, we've also done that. Like, depending on which Muslim group, you know, we've done everything
I,
under the sun, bro.
well, that's the thing is that's the reason I reject the concept of like Sunni Islam or the madhabs and this and that is because they want to legislate what in essence isn't. God is giving us the boundaries, the upper limit, the bottom limit. He's giving us some case law, and then it's up to us to use discernment. Now, let's say I want to use that approach where, hey, I'm going to try my best to uphold the letter of the law while negating the spirit of the law. It's like me thinking I'm going to one up, you know, God. It's like, it's not going to work. It's going to backfire, right? It's like, God knows that, hey, are you just doing this because you genuinely, you know, have the best of intention, or are you just trying to find, you know, ways around the system? This is what you're seeing with people with their like secret marriages and all this like debauchery. They think that they found some loophole in the system.
Okay, so, bro, now I want to know, Mr. Good Morning, are you going to give me bay'ah or pay me jizya? Yeah, those are the only two options you have.
Well, look, I'll tell you the perspective we have regarding 929 with the jizya. So jizya is just reparations. So put this in the historical context. You have the believers, they're living in Mecca, right? They basically were robbed of their livelihood, their homes, their well-being. They had to go to Medina to establish themselves. Once they reconquered Mecca, the expectations, just like in any other war, you have reparations. You have to be basically compensated for your losses. What got taken historically is jizya, like towards the dhimmi, the people who aren't Muslim. What's funny is, if you look at it historically, so when the Muslim Empire expanded, okay, they didn't know how to run this, you know, multi-nation, multi-ethnic cultures that they're now the rulers over. And this is very standard. What ends up happening is you just end up taking over their administration. So like a famous example of this is Joe of Damascus. So this is during the Umayyads. He basically is a Roman. They took over the Levant, and now he's just reporting to his Islamic caliphate, right? And they're going to continue operating just like the Romans did with some minor modifications. So like during the time of the Romans, they had different tax systems. Okay, are you a Roman citizen? Are you a landowner? Are you free? Are you a woman, a man, a slave, this and that? And based on that, it's going to constitute what you pay. So when the Muslims took over, they just basically reestablished that. But their criteria was, are you Arab or non-Arab? Are you Muslim or non-Muslim? That's like the predominant slaver owns, right? And they basically take their existing tax system and they just reapply it towards these, you know, new groups that they designate, and they call that the jizya.
Interesting. Anyways, yo, listen, good morning. I have to drink some coffee and I have to deal with another interruption. So I'll leave you for now.
No, God bless you, brother. Good talking.
Peace. Peace.
Triple A?
Oh, peace, brother. Sorry, I didn't know I was unmuted.
It was my